I think it's important to realize that innovation that's born out of an empathy or a lived experience, or that might not initially have the TAM, total addressable market, everybody's thinking about. But it is a technology that can be spread further. You can take the electric toothbrush, you can take Alexa, you can take all these things that started out that way. And I think it's important to look at that. And I think there's also an element that's really important in innovation around, and it's derived out of empathy and inclusion. I joke around that the only AI that really matters is accessibility and inclusion, and that's an optic we use when looking at things. A tool, it is a tool, it's another tool in the toolbox to make things come to fruition. But you know, I think it's also important to realize that this early stage innovation, especially that's born out of empathy in areas like disability and accessibility innovation, is to be looked at as not concessionary, not impact first. They both can occur. And typically if you solve a problem, you're going to have a nice impact and you're going to have a good ROI as well. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Speaking to you, Tom.
Yeah, if I could really, just
please.
Really interesting cross-section here from, I think what this conference is about, is talking about innovation and then the boots on the ground. And I think about what you said about arrogance really comes into play in an outside program coming into a school like mine and presenting it to 240 very different students. And one of the best things about our population is how blunt they are. They'll tell you if something is working. And making sure that innovation is responsive to that actually boots on the ground experience. So that when you work with a student for the first time or with an adult, and they give you feedback that it's not working, that there's the non-arrogant approach to adjust to it. And I think that's sort of what's really interesting about this conference, is that whether it's the Step Up Academy or a school like myself, there's really opportunities to come in there and try these innovations with the students that we work with, and you'll get very much real-time feedback as far as what's working and what's not.
Please.
So I love that you frame this this arrogance concept. It's great. So there's this really, because let's get real here. Let's not beat around the bush and be on the edge. Let's go right in on where the opportunities are and where the challenges are. So there's this concept and I'm a health services researcher. There's a concept in research training called community-based participatory research. Has anyone ever heard of this? Community-based participatory research. Okay, so that's a research concept, right? The concept around the research, this approach to research is that if you want to understand a community, you have a research question, you actually have to engage with that community, you actually have to listen to that community, you actually have to develop the questions with that community, which means that your preconceived notions may have to pivot around what the community says is important to them, and oh, by the way, they should be authors on your paper, right? And so now, take that concept and bring it to this innovation, right? Does your entire approach to how you develop your tools and your interventions change if you bring the CBPR type of concept in? You might have to pivot your idea. You might have to address a problem that they actually think is more important. You might have to focus on things that they're already good at and make them better. But you have to go into those conversations with an open enough mind to understand that the community knows what the community needs, and you may not. Even if you're part of the community, by the way, you may not fully know, right? So I just want to bring that.
Lovely. I think we're now starting to touch upon the core of some of the issues here. I see you're very eager to answer that, so please.
Not answer, I just want to build on top of it, and I'm going to wear my entrepreneur hat. About a year ago, we started a company called Second Careers. The problem statement was, because of the advent of technology, there are people who are losing jobs left, right, and center. It's impacting some of the early entrants, and it's impacting people who are, let's say, 45 plus. The ability for these people to get back into the job force is going to be very, very difficult. And over the next 5 years, it's going to get compounded before new sets of jobs will arise. But there's one thing that, Paul? Paul? Sorry, Edmond. One thing that Edmond said was, we need to sort of prepare people, okay? And he used the word pivot. So one of the things we said that we need to help people either extend, pivot, or restart. That is the mantra, right, with which we approach the whole company. We have about 4,000 people on our platform world over, but listening to them, okay, because not everybody wants to necessarily pivot. Not everybody, some people are just happy being, okay, I lost my job, I don't want to do anything. They're not the right audience. But then for every one of them, there are probably hundreds who want to come back, right? So I felt that concept was very powerful and something that we are practicing, and I wanted to share it with everybody.
Sorry, I think Ben had and then you, Paul, yeah? If you had no, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the key things, and we're describing what you described, we call it social capital around the innovation. It's as necessary of an ingredient as financial capital. But it all starts to I think the great thing about an Empathy Forward is it allows for this concept of collaboration and open sourcing. And the objective is to solve a problem. And when you start there, you usually, if you can wrap it around with, again, social capital and financial capital, you can chaperone that to success, whatever that may be at the time. I think it's a very important concept, and I think learning from research into early stage, commercialization of things, and then working with traditional investors around either broadening their risk profiles, but also engaging in the acceleration of such thing. It all takes collaboration.
Yeah. Good. Did you want to
just
add to that?
very briefly, I'll close it out, this topic, by saying I want to build on what everybody here is talking about, on the ability to pivot, the ability to change, the ability to possibly even start over. There is an unspoken expectation in that suggestion of you as a founder or a builder being psychologically willing to do that. And what I have found is founders end up on one of two sides of this. When faced with the question of, this isn't working, we need to change what we're doing, they either do or they don't. And what drives that decision is whether they have fallen in love with their product or whether they have fallen in love with their problem. And I think anyone on this stage who invests in companies at any level would agree that if you find that their biggest returns will always come from the founders who are in love with solving the problem, as opposed to founders who just want their product to exist. And if it doesn't work the way that we wanted it to, well, something's wrong with the people using it or the market or the economy or anything but what they're doing.
So as an investor, that's the first thing that we look for. Is the entrepreneur so smitten by their own solution or the problem and forgets the fact about, is this really serving a purpose? Is this really scalable? Can I do it with the right amount of money? And can I return the investor their money in multiples higher than what they invested?
You got more product screenshots in your deck than you have actual numbers and traction. It's an immediate no.
Coming back to that pivot thing, start with the problem, build a product. At some point, there will be some discrepancy in that you need to do some changes. It's inevitably. those changes in this area could sometimes means, I assume anyway, that maybe moving a bit more away from what gives you most financial returns, pivoting into something that gives more social returns. I would say that could be an issue in these cases. Cool. You don't agree? That's great. Please.
I do and I don't.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's about the willingness to pivot. You know, if you start with an outcome in mind, and we're fortunate that we deal with a lot of innovation that is born out of necessity, lived experience.
Yeah.
Many of those entrepreneurs are very much focused on the outcome they hope for, the problem solving they hope for, and are very open to everything else that goes on. So I think, you know, Tam, I'm a partner in a children's healthcare fund. It has the same kind of demographic mindset of small market, niche, all these things. You still can get a financial return on small market niche. And
please.
I mean, so I completely agree, and I'll also add, even though you've got some venture people in the panel, venture is not always the right answer to the investment in your solution. So,
absolutely right. Absolutely, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, be clear what kind of money you want, but even before choosing the kind of money, you need to be clear. So you talked about pivoting to a social model when the for-profit model fails. I would run a mile from somebody who thinks like that. If you are clear about being a social venture, be a social venture and attract the right kind of capital. Don't flip, don't pivot, because that sort of makes you very unattractive, in my opinion. And VCs, and they're not all bad people, we are discerning. Right? We like to decide what this person is doing. So it's not that we don't care about the empathy or anything, but we are in business to make sure that we get returns and, So be clear in terms of what your model is. I agree with you.
Yeah, and sorry, if you're not clear, right, the type of capital at the certain stages is critical. Yeah. And what we've facilitated quite a bit is using charitable assets for that catalytic capital and that translation to commercialization that allows you to kind of sort that out. Is this more of a social enterprise, or is this truly a venture backable situation?
Yep.
And I think that does a lot of good for the traditional capital formation and venture and complex. And there's a lot of folks out there that want to support that.
Yep. So choose your capital model wisely as well, and who you work with. I'm sorry, I would love to speak to you all day. Actually, we have to round this off. Can I just have one last very short point from each and every one of you? Because what I've seen when working with social entrepreneurs, mostly in Norway and Scandinavia, making services and products on top of language models in order to accelerate things. We always tend to run into the issue that if we do that, these language models is not trained. They don't have the data sets in order to be specifically inclusive of all the different aspects of the people we're talking about here. So that's one aspect we need to figure out before making those services, yeah? But if I can ask each and every one of you, if you could leave the audience with one idea or one action that would make innovation more empathetic and inclusive starting tomorrow, the easy start, what would that be? Who would like to start? Please.
I'll take that. A couple of things that nobody pivots better than educators. Every single day, every single moment, every counselor, that moment to moment, you have to pivot to change to that. And so the one innovation I would say from a technology standpoint is I do think, I'm not in the market capital venture of things, I'm in the service delivery part of it, but there's a lifetime of potential services in the clients that you can create if you have innovation that spans the lifespan, that not only begins with students, but also services adults, which is really the unserved area of this population. So if an innovation looks at that picture, not just what early intervention or what educational things look like, but how we service people for their lifetime. That's what I'd love to see.
Thank you.
So if I want to give you a couple of points. Number one, Philadelphia is becoming a big hub, and it is rising in its ranks in terms of being this innovation hub, whether it's technology, whether it's life sciences, biosciences. Second, the number of organizations that are available to help you, even before you start thinking about funding, incubation, ideation, mentorship for women, okay? I see a lot of women in the audience. There are people like me, and I'm just a very, very small part of it, but there is tremendous amount of rising support. Lastly, I think entrepreneurship is the ultimate leveler for most societal issues, okay? And this is something that I hang my hat on. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Good. Ben?
And I'll back that up and I'll say that the ability to strike a balance between empathy and efficiency, between a social business model and a financial business model. Without getting off on a tangent, I think there's a very strong argument to be made that that is one of the few proven ways to create sustainable impact over time. Create a market-driven model where the financial strategy reinforces the impact strategy, the social strategy, and the social and vice versa. Easier said than done. And there are professors that teach entire courses on this stuff. But like my father would always say to me from a very young age, everything in moderation. Including moderation. And I'll bring it here and say even empathy and inclusion. And I don't mean that you should only go 75% of the way towards pulling empathic and inclusive practices into your venture, but unmoderated empathy, unmoderated inclusion tends to spiral into unsustainable business practices. And if you're not aware how you're operating, what form of decision making, your particular brain, and for many of us in the room here, we operate with that empathic default orientation. We think about the social implications, the reducing harm, before we think about the economic implications, before we think about the impact on the business viability. It's not to say we won't get there, but that's not the instinctual response. And so to be aware that that is our instinctual response, to recognize it, and then recognize that we have to go one step further and juxtapose it against the business viability is, I think the space could use more of that sort of discipline in our decision-making processes amongst founders and builders.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I'll kind of keep it simple. I think it's about collaboration. That's what's necessary. The acceleration and incubation landscape is very fragmented. So to try, I think this is maybe a plug for Empathy Tech.
That's what we're hoping
is
for.
that this could be the center for that defragmenting the necessary resources for discipline, for building out models, for mentorship, for the right capital, all at access point. I think that's kind of what's needed. It's pretty amazing times, and I think it's Empathy Tech and what we're trying to achieve here, and with the lab, being able to get into schools and real lab-like environments with the co-creation concept would be tremendous successful. The right things will move forward. The things that are not necessarily meant to move forward, we'll learn from, and that learning and that open sourcing will be critical.
Thank you.
Anyone ever heard of a disease called retinitis pigmentosa? Okay, a couple of hands up, and I got a yes on the stage. So it's a debilitating eye disease where you progressively go blind. And I have a founder who has 2 daughters, two young girls, where that is the challenge. And so he asks, well, why? Why are there no solutions? Why are there no interventions for this? And he got some answers, and it's around the genetics, because it's a genetic predisposition. Well, why aren't my genetics? He asked why again, and why again. It just so happens that there's actually not enough African and African diaspora genomes even in the data sets to be able to explore a solution for his children. You ask enough whys, and you get to a opportunity, right? And now he set out to build the largest African diaspora genome in the world. Okay. So what I'm going to leave you with as a charge is be bold, and in order to be bold, be inquisitive, so that you can be bold and actually change the world the way we need you to.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks to all our panelists. You are free to walk off stage now. You can give your mics to the technology.
That's great.
Is that a nice build-up?
Yes, terrific.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, really love that. We've started something. Let's continue with this now. Okay, our next speaker has been leading by example in inclusive technology for decades. Gloria Bell is a seasoned leader, entrepreneur, and advocate for equity in tech, founder of Women in Tech Summit and the Inspiring Tech Foundation, and board president of Startup Leaders. She has empowered women, non-binary, and underrepresented technologists across communities. Please welcome Gloria Bell.
So, we good? Am I on? Okay. I actually want to start out by thanking the last panel. First of all, as someone who has spent the last 20 plus years in entrepreneurship and technology and innovation, they were very inspiring. But they also did an amazing job of setting up my talk. So I want to say thank you to them. My name is Gloria Bell. You got my very, very gracious introduction, but just to give you a little insight on why I'm here to talk to you today about empathy as infrastructure, depending on what hour of the day it is, will depend on which hat I am wearing. So my brand new, as of last week, day job is I am the Director of Operations at Zip Code Wilmington. We are a coding academy, changing lives by helping individuals proceed on new career paths. I am also the board president at Startup Leaders. You may have formerly heard of us as Philly Startup Leaders. We are the nation's largest entrepreneur support and resource organization, founded right here in Philly 18 years ago, and we are now a global organization. And I am also the founder of the Women in Tech Summit and the Inspiring Tech Foundation. So all of those things to say, I have spent most of the last over 20 years working on equity, inclusion, belonging, diversity, and overall fairness in the tech industry and in entrepreneurship and innovation. So I want to start by asking all of you just really quickly, how many in the room are technologists? Okay, fair number. How many of you work in tech organizations in some other role? Product owner, project manager, designer? Okay, another fair number of you. How many of you have some kind of responsibility for choosing the technology your organization uses? whole lot more hands. And how many of you use technology? Okay, pretty much every hand. So the reason I ask you that question is because what we're going to talk about today is really, I want to get across the message. I'm not just talking to the technologists in the room, and I'm not just talking to the designers and the product owners and the project managers. I'm talking to all of you because as users of technology, as consumers of technology, we all have a responsibility. If we're not building it, we have input on what gets built. So all of this really applies to everyone. So I want to start with one thought. We have built years, decades now, since we had the first computers, building faster systems, sleeker products. Everybody's looking at their iPhone right now, right? When we talk about sleeker products. Smarter algorithms to help us do all of these things that we don't want to do. But all too often, the people that we are building for are an afterthought. The comment that was just made in the last panel about the founders that fall in love with their products and not the problem, that is a pervasive issue. We start with the problem and then we fall in love with what we're building. But my premise for you is empathy is not a soft skill. It's what we hear over and over again. Anything having to do with feelings is a soft skill. But empathy is not a soft skill. Empathy can be an integral part of your infrastructure. It can be a core system that determines whether the tech that we are building is good for everyone. So how do we get there? First of all, we need to define what empathy as an infrastructure is. So empathy as an infrastructure is not just feeling with others or feeling about others, but it is intentionally, consciously, consistently building with them in mind. So let's see here. We're a little bit ahead of, there we go. So empathy as infrastructure is a set of processes, metrics, and rituals that are embedding care, fairness, and inclusion into our design, into our ideas, and into how we hire and how we test. So we're going to talk about that. Why does it matter? How many of you have ever tried to use a piece of technology that you ran into a difficulty with? Okay, a lot of you. For me, one of the biggest ones is I have two sons that are video gamers. My partner loves to play video games. I can't play video games because of the motion, the lights, and the sound. I have vertigo. The minute I turn on a video game, my vertigo is activated. How many video game designers are thinking about that when they think about all the sounds, the noise, the way the lights flash, all of those kinds of things? So this is what we're talking about when we talk about most teams treat empathy, they treat equity, they treat inclusion as an optional. It's a nice to have. We're gonna build this really cool thing, and if we can include those things that make sure everyone can use it, well, great. But if we can't, that's okay. We have a customer base. But what happens when that's your thought process, when empathy is not ingrained into your infrastructure, in your design, in your innovation, in your build, it results in inequalities. We get biased algorithms that are giving us results that don't include every lived experience. We are getting exclusionary policies, benefits that are set up for a company that don't take everyone's lived experience or expression of themselves into consideration. And we get a culture that is grounded in who survives instead of the question of, is everybody thriving? So some examples of these things that can happen. Most of you have probably heard about this in the news over the last couple of years. Facial recognition systems that don't recognize half of our world's faces because they don't recognize faces of people of color or of women. Accessibility features that get added after a product's already launched instead of being included in the design from the very beginning. And we get teams that celebrate innovation and finances and speed to ship instead of celebrating belonging. Is everybody on the team a valued voice? So, what we end up with is this problem. But how we solve this problem is that empathy is the missing infrastructure connecting our intention to our outcomes. The reality is most technologists, most founders, most people building products are not going into what they do intentionally excluding people. But it's an afterthought instead of part of the process. But when it becomes part of the process, this is what we have. We have products that are equitable, we have fair policies, and we have inclusive cultures. So, how do we get from feeling to framework? From talking about empathy as just something we feel to it actually being a part of how we operate intentionally and without having to leave anyone out? One, we have to take it from being an individual responsibility to an institutional part of our operations. And we're going to talk about how, because these are really big ideas and they're like, well, yes, of course, this should happen. But it's a lot harder than it can seem sometimes. So what do? We have some core components of empathy systems. We start with listening systems. We are building constant feedback so that we always know where we are in the process. We're building inclusive user research. When we're going out doing research about our product or our idea, we're being very conscious and very considerate of who are we talking to. And the most important question that is asked repeatedly at multiple points, preferably in every one of your daily sprint reviews and stand-ups, is who are we not hearing from? We have to make sure we're hearing from everyone. Another way that we make it an institutional part of what we do is we have decision checklists. So these checklists actually build empathy gates into how we operate. And the way we do that is before every decision is finalized, we ask some questions. We ask who benefits? Who could be harmed? We talk a lot about who benefits. We don't talk enough a lot about who can be harmed. And the most important question is, how will we know? How are we going to know who's benefiting and who's being harmed? And how do we build that into our process? How do we build that into our feedback that we're getting? How do we build it into reviews of how we're going through the process? One of the things that's really important also is including inclusive rituals, because the reality is that diverse, inclusive teams build diverse, inclusive products. If your team is not diverse and is not inclusive, there are voices that are missing that could be crucial to what you're building. So, real simple way to make sure that you have inclusive rituals. When you have a meeting, so when all of you go into a meeting, how normal is it for 1 or 2 people to lead the meetings? Pretty normal. What if you rotated meeting roles? Everybody at the meeting now has a responsibility, and every voice at the table gets heard. Very, very simple change, but it can make a huge impact. How many of you have been on a Zoom call and there's this, you've got the little Brady Bunch up there, and there's one person, one little square that you almost never hear from? You're missing a critical voice. So rotating meeting roles makes sure everybody gets heard from, everybody is recognized. Having constant, consistent feedback loops. That lets you embed bias checks in your Q&A, so your quality assurance, all of your quality checks, and in your user testing cycles. When your feedback loops aren't just things that happen at the design phase and at the launch phase, but they're happening throughout your entire process, you're making sure that you're not getting too far down the path with a problem. And lightweight audits. So the reason we really focus on these being lightweight audits is because we want to make sure the process is still moving along, that we're not creating roadblocks. All we're creating is stopping and breathing and thinking points. So if you're doing lightweight audits, you're getting regular empathy checks throughout your process, throughout your meetings, throughout your hiring. If you institute these as a regular part of sprint reviews, as a regular part of milestones, then you're making sure that you're doing those check-ins on a regular basis. Okay, I know this is all kind of deep information. Is everybody with me? All right, awesome. So, this is what we get when we have empathy in action. We get fairness, we get inclusion, and bottom line, we get better products, and better products lead to better revenues, and then you make the investors that were up here really happy. So, how do we operationalize empathy? This is where it gets, we have to break everything we do in operations down to its components. So in hiring and onboarding, empathy shows up by who's at the table. And I'm talking both sides of the table. You can't just be looking at inclusion and diversity in your interviewees. You need to be looking at in your interviewers as well. Are you making sure all voices are represented? And when I talk about diversity at that table, I'm not just talking about gender. I'm not just talking about race. I'm not just talking about skill ability. I am talking about job title, position level. Wouldn't it make more sense if you want to bring on a hire who really is a right fit and is going to do the best job for your team, if everyone who is going to interact and work with that individual is a part of the hiring process? I was just a part of a hiring process where even the 2 admins that report to me were part of the hiring process. That was huge. They have to work with me daily. They are the employees who actually work with me the closest. They got to have a say in the interviewing and the hiring process. So, diverse panels, diverse people in the room when you're hiring and when you're onboarding. In your design and development, how many of you know what the term edge case means? Okay, handful. Most of my technologists know what it is. So the edge case, those are the people when you are doing research or who are using your product, that you have the people in the middle who are the ones who are using it exactly the way you expected to. The edge cases are the ones maybe using it a little different. Maybe they're the ones having the difficulty with it. So what's really important when you're doing design and development, you're doing your user research and you're having people doing testing, that you don't treat those edge cases as exceptions, treat them as signals. What is that edge case telling you about your product? What is it telling you about the software? So I'm going to give you going to go on a little tangent here and tell you about a startup that I mentored a few years ago. And was incredibly fortunate because the founders were the kind of people that they built empathy in from day one because that's who they were. So they didn't think to do it any other way. One of the things that they did was really looking at their edge cases and paying attention to the data that they were getting back from that. What they ended up discovering was they had people using their product in a way that they had not expected. And what ended up happening is, with a few minor tweaks to really address the way those people, the edge cases, were using those products, they ended up with a whole different product line. They now had 2 products going to market. They now doubled their revenue because they paid attention to their edge cases. They paid attention to those as signals. In your governance and metrics, the things we all track, we track KPIs, key performance indicators, we track ROI, return on investment, we track our financials, we track how quickly we're getting something to market. What if we were tracking inclusion and belonging just as closely? There's a huge metric to tell you where you may go. And the other thing is with culture. A culture that has empathy as part of its infrastructure can lead to empathy-driven relationship, empathy-driven leadership. And what empathy-driven leadership looks like is people who are equipped, trained, encouraged, and even measured by whether or not they will have brave conversations in environments of psychological safety. That is what you want from a leader. You want someone who's willing to have a brave conversation. The other thing when you're talking about culture is you build in an assumption of complexity. Because we are complex as human beings. We are complex in more ways than we could stand up here and list in the time that I have. But if we're always assuming complexity, then we're always looking for those opportunities to embed empathy, to embed inclusion, to embed belonging. So, a lot of things we should do. How do we do it? One of the things that we do is we have a checklist that is addressed at every milestone and absolutely before launch. And in that checklist, we are asking who might be unintentionally excluded. Not just who might be excluded, but who might be unintentionally excluded. Whose lived experience is missing from this table? Who do we need to be including to make sure that we're including everyone's lived experiences? And for me, this is one of the most important ones. How are we measuring fairness post-launch? Because it's real easy to get into the how many we sold and how much money we made and what do we need to build, what's the next add-on and are we including metrics about fairness in that as well? We have templates. Nothing is left to chance. And we're always making equal comparisons by building templates for our feedback loops, for those mini audits that we talked about. We are looking at things in the same way to make sure that we are always doing apples to apples comparisons so that we can identify those signals from those edge cases, so that we can identify the gaps. So, I could talk for another 2 or 3 hours about how to actually do this. It is both complex and really easy. And I am happy at any point if any of you want to sit down and talk about your specific situations and how to institutionalize empathy into your frameworks. My contact information will be available. Please reach out to me, because I know I'm probably leaving you with more questions than answers at the moment. But for right now, this is what we measure. And here's my call to action to you. When we treat empathy as infrastructure, when it is operationalized into everything that we do, equity stops being someone's side project. That one developer who's always raising their hand and saying, hey, we're forgetting this, we're forgetting this group, we're forgetting this person. It stops being that, and it becomes everyone's shared responsibility. So it doesn't get put to the side. It doesn't get forgotten when you're trying to institute speed. The other thing is, empathy is not about being nice. It's about building systems that work for everyone. Whether that's how your organization operates, whether it's the product that you're putting out into the world. We should always be making our best efforts to build for everyone. Not because it's nice, not because it's the right thing to do, because it is both of those things. But it's also just darn good business. There are statistics repeatedly that prove diverse teams that have inclusion and belonging built into their operation, they make more money. It's good business. So, empathy isn't soft, it's structural. And structural scales. It lets you build better products, bigger programs, reach more people, and do more good in the world. So, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Gloria Bell. Please. Now we'll have a 10-minute break before we'll continue with the program in 2 parallel sessions. One here on the main stage called The Lab, and one on the second stage right at the other end called Boots on the Ground. That will be hosted by our friend Jamil Owens. That means that when you come back from the break, you have to choose your track, but you're free to wander between the stages. Just urge you politely to respect the speakers and don't disturb them on stage. So have a nice break, and I'll see you back here at 11 o'clock where we start, and yeah, see you then.
You see that petite little flyer? That is the world's smallest self-powered drone.
Mr. Robot. You are the bomb, Mr. Robot. Yeah, here is perfect.
It was a great walk.
You was great Ben.
He's gonna offer you water. You just start.
Well, that's about the only thing, because I don't drink.
Do you like some water?
Yes.
Yes. Just
It's not no strong water, is it?
no, just
I
normal
just
water.
messing with the robot.
Yeah, it has you. Just the same.
That robot is all right. Too bad I won't be living long enough to enjoy the full facilities of what this is going to be. But I
Please
can
take
see
a
it's gonna
bottle.
be
Do you have essential tremors? Do you have trouble eating? Is frustration setting in?
Check 1, 2.
When is the video with the audio? Is that like right in the beginning? No. All right, cool. I'll be back in time for that. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll just show it during the car. experience here. So that's they forget that. Yeah, yeah. Last year we didn't have like parallel sessions, we had everything in one, so then we experienced that some of it wasn't for everyone, so we wandered off, and then like, okay, that's an issue, why don't we have to, let's see if we created another problem.
So you learn.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. We're going to be demonstrating the Para robot briefly during the talk, so if you want to move up a little bit closer so you can see it, it'll be great. You picked very good seats. I thought it was for us.
Welcome back from the break, and welcome to the lab, session 1. This is where ideas meet practice. Across the next talks, you'll see how empathy fuels research, engineering, and care models that expand independence and inclusion. And our first lab session showcases the power of collaboration between engineering and nursing. Dr. Pamela Cacchione is a professor of geropsychiatric nursing at Penn, nurse scientist at Penn Presbyterian, and CEO and founder of Aging Sense, exploring low-cost robots to enhance function and social engagement for older adults. Dr. Mark Yim is the ASA, did I pronounce it like that? ASA, sorry. Is the ASA Whitney Professor of Mechanical Engineering at Penn, a pioneer in modular robotics, faculty director for integrated product design, and co-director of Penn 4C, leading a new initiative in responsible innovation. So please, welcome Dr. Pamela Cacchione and Dr. Mark Yim.
Welcome, everyone. How many engineers in the room? Great. Any nurses in the room? Awesome. Welcome, welcome. We're so excited you're here. So Dr. Yim and I have been working together for about a little over 10 years now, and have had quite a few really fun adventures that we'd like to share with you. And just a little bit about gerontological nursing. We have, that's right, slow. All right, so we focus on the health and well-being of older adults, basically. And it's really, we're even expanding now to thinking about impacting aging from an earlier age as from birth to death. So really thinking about how do you address aging in a more positive way and thinking more about function and quality of life. And so we really work in the community a lot. I have a nurse scientist as well in a health system, but I also work in the community to address community health concerns. And we really focus on health equity in all of our research and in our science, as well as equitable design. And I've learned a lot from Dr. Yim along the way, so it's been a lot of fun. And we'll pass it off to him to share what he does.
I was, just to give you a little bit of background where I come from.
A little closer.
Let me just get some videos. I'm going to try to go a little bit quickly since we're running a little bit behind. I used to run the GRASP lab at UPenn, which is the oldest robotics research lab in the country. It's got about 25 faculty and 400 students that are involved. So we have a large group that are working on a variety of different things. 3 months ago, I stepped down from that and took over a new effort that we're calling responsible innovation. So responsible innovation essentially is getting engineers to start thinking about what happens as a consequence of what we do, maybe beyond what we are trying to do in terms of succeeding. What could go wrong if we succeed? As we start to look at AI and everyone's worried about the bad things that may happen with AI, this really relates to what Gloria Bell just talked about previously. How do you make sure that what you're doing is inclusive for everybody, that you're not harming unintended to society and that type of thing? And so right now we're just starting that. We're trying to figure out how can we address things that might harm people, but at the same time, how can we do positive things? So doing things like things that might help the community. These are some other robotics projects from my lab, which include large robots. So we have the smallest robot in the world. We also have maybe the largest robot in the world. This one is one that can go into a damaged building for first responders and grow to be, and it wasn't quite, that one was a mistake. It was the first test, but it was supposed to grow large enough to actually support a building if the building is damaged. Usually when firefighters go into a burning building, they have to build structures to make sure it doesn't fall on them as they go in, so we instead want a robot that can do that. On the other left side, there's an image of a steerable needle, so medical devices that can go in and steer around in your body instead of having to just go straight. So those are the types of things we're looking at. And essentially, the thing that we want to talk about between Pam and I are how can we get nurses and engineers to work together, bringing technology to those health type aspects.
So one of our first projects was an NSF-funded study that used a commercially available robot, Relay. Some of you may have seen one in a hotel doing room service, to apply to elder care, to try and determine how this could possibly use with older adults. So we ran focus groups with clinicians, OTs, PTs, nurses, physicians, social workers, as well as paid caregivers, and then participants of a life center, Living Independently for Elders. And in Philadelphia, the School of Nursing used to own and operate a life program, so that's where we started. And what we found out is we have to really set the stage of what the expectations are. So when we asked them what they wanted the robot to be able to do, they said pick the patient up off the floor after they've fallen. Well, a low-cost mobile robot isn't going to be able to do that. So we had to backpedal a little bit. So it sounds like it would be better if we actually prevented falls. And so we created this robot to perform tasks that would improve their ambulation status. So we did a walking and hydration task, and we had a robot whisperer that taught this robot to learn the environment and had it independently going up to patients' rooms and fake knocking with a loudspeaker on their door to invite them to go for a walk in their apartment building. This was a failed experiment. It failed because the robot, even though it had learned and we had programmed it not to get too far ahead. It did get too far ahead of the older adults and would spin around and startle the older adults almost to the point of them falling. And then the older adults were also tired when they got back home from the life program and really didn't want to go out and walk again and what have you. So we really didn't get as great participation. So we went back, so it encouraged them to walk and then offered them hydration. And so we went back and did a Wizard of Oz version. You might be able to see Kaio in the blue, who's actually driving. We need the sound, yeah.
You are the bomb, Mr. Robot.
Okay, I think here is perfect.
Okay.
It was a great walk.
You was great, Ben.
So it's gonna offer you water. You just turn.
Well, that's about the only thing, because I don't drink.
Do you like some water?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not no strong water, is it?
No, just
I
normal
just
water.
messing with the robot.
Yeah, it has you. Just a second.
That robot is all right. Too bad I won't be living long enough to enjoy the full facilities of what this is going to be. But I
Please
can
take
see
a
it's gonna
bottle.
be something great.
Oh, you can take a bar here, sir.
Diggity dog. Next time, have it on ice, Mr. Robot.
One more question before I leave. On a scale of 0, meaning no pain, to 10, the worst possible pain, how much pain are you experiencing right now?
0.
Just a couple comments on that video before we go into the next thing. We had the robots call the older adults by name, and they really liked that. One of the other things that they liked the attention they got when they were walking with the robot, but they also really dispelled misbelief. You know, they really engaged with the robot. And as engineers, we had to work with Kaio a little bit to be a little more patient with his next step, because he was often stopping them and they were still talking. So it was really a wonderful experience to see the older adults really fully interact with Relay, the robot. But then later we went on to discover how humanoid a robot they would like to work with. And one of the things they called Relay the glorified trash can, which was kind of funny. It was a surprise that they actually thought that way of Relay, because they seemed to really enjoy interacting with it. So then we had the Quarry robot. Do you want to talk about Quarry?
Yeah, so Quarry is the next version of what we built on for following this type of thing. One of the lessons we learned, there were a bunch of lessons we learned with first Relay in terms of how you interact with, how we should change the design when you interact with elders. You need to speak louder. We had some buttons. There were little eyes on the screen that they thought were buttons, and so they try to push on the eye, that kind of thing. People who have a walker may have difficulty reaching into that bin where there was the drinks, that kind of stuff. We also realized that the interface is really important. Having a glorified trash can is not very inviting. So having something that's more humanoid, it starts to have a better model for people to engage. So we developed we're trying to make a low-cost humanoid robot, which is not easy. So we have a new contract with NSF to try to see what we can do with that.
So we did, again, focus groups with caregivers, patients, and clinicians. And we decided to ask them how humanoid would they want the robot to be. And they described that, several of them agreed that they wanted it to look like Rosie from the Jetsons. So if you look at Quarry, he kind of remember, I don't know the gender of Quarry. It kind of looks a little bit like Rosie from the Jetsons, so it was very well accepted there. And we were very fortunate to have Quarry actually at the Art Museum on exhibit. And it was really great until COVID hit. And it got locked up in the Art Museum for several months. I think if we had known it was going to be that long, we could have built another one, right? So, and then COVID changed everything for all of us, right? And what ended up happening is we had grandiose plans for Quarry. It was going to have facial recognition with RFID tag backup, and it was going to engage with participants at the Life program and take them to their appointments. and encourage them to take care of their health and all of these things.
Create more.
And that totally had to go out the window, and we had to pivot. How many of you have had to pivot in a project? Yeah. So we had to pivot, and so we turned Quarry into a COVID screener. We, took advantage of what everyone had to do when they entered a building was to go through all the COVID questions. And so we turned Quarry into a COVID screener, and it was quite successful. The participants really liked, you said it was direct to the point. We were running out of money at that point, so we didn't have a great voice, and so the voice was hard to hear for some people, but other than that, it was very well received.
No, that's on the other side.
Oh, okay. And then along the way, I met Dr. Shibata, who is developed the Paro robot. And so I brought Paro with me. This is a robotic seal. He originally developed cats and dogs, and people weren't really interested in the cats and dogs because they didn't interact the way they expected them to. And instead, he went and studied baby harp seals and developed Paro. Is she on? There you go. Okay. And so I have been working with the Paro robot now for since COVID, really. And we've run one study where we actually you can go to the next slide, I think. Yeah, so these are some of my participants at the Penn Presbyterian who engaged with Paro. They had 2 one-hour sessions with Paro, and our goal was to try and decrease agitation and restlessness. And what we did was it actually decreased agitation, but also decreased pain. It actually impacted their pain because it was a lovely distraction, and they fully engaged with the robot. So the first person in the middle, he didn't fully engage until his niece came up and visited with him, and then he engaged a little bit more. The one on the top engaged so much that his son happened to be there, and he was actually videotaping his dad interacting with the robot. And then the woman on the right was really enjoying herself. The man on the left was my dad. My dad had vascular dementia, and I brought Paro home, and he really interacted well with Paro. It was really quite joyful. Next. Okay.
Okay, so one of the first interactions I had with Pam was actually for a class. We were trying to come up with it was a lab for juniors in mechanical engineering, and we wanted them to study vibrations. Vibrations is an important engineering concept, and we realized that there's a health thing that's essential tremor, Parkinson's disease, essential tremor, where it's difficult to eat. And so we gave them as a task for the students to see if you can come up with a spoon that
Do you have essential tremors? Do you have trouble eating?
That.
Is frustration setting in? Not anymore. We are Smoothware, and this
so
is our
they
new
decided to
Smoothware
actually
spoon.
make a commercial for the device that they developed.
Not just silverware, it's Smoothware. The Smoothware uses an innovative new design to minimize the vibrations transferred from your hand to the spoon. The Smoothware uses a high-tech foam that dissipates those vibrations and makes it possible for you to eat. Enjoy going out to eat with your family and friends without worrying about your tremor. The Smoothware will smooth the path of your spoon from the plate to your mouth.
That was actually good. It used to be really embarrassing, especially when I ate out.
All right, so we're running out of time, so I'll get speed through this a little bit. A couple things about the students there. They developed a solution. They made it into a commercial, which we didn't ask them to do. They put on the electrical, what is it called?
TENS unit to actually stimulate the tremor.
Which they didn't need to do, but they actually, so they were, that was
a little painful.
Yeah, it's not.
Troopers.
Yeah, but, and it was also really low cost. And one of the groups actually patented their device and then tried to make a company around it. And this is all after around a 3-week lab in class. But it all came about with interacting with Pam, where they actually got to also talk to people who have elders who have this type of problem. And so they were realizing, oh, we can actually make a difference in someone's life. It's really concrete, which can be very inspiring for students.
One of the things Dr. Yim has been very helpful for me is he connected me with a senior design group, and they helped me develop, I've created a pair of heart failure monitoring socks that monitor for edema and fatigue in patients with heart failure to try and identify exacerbations and response to treatment. And I've been prototyping feverishly ever since. And the last prototype is the one with the non-skid socks, because I work in healthcare. And so we will be, I just got funded through a P30 to actually gather data to develop algorithms. And it's all because of this relationship that I've had with Dr. Yim. So it's been very mutually beneficial.
One of the things that we've also developed is something that's called Pen4C. So the Dean of Nursing and the Dean of Engineering got together and they wanted engineers and nurses to work together. So they charged us with trying to figure out how to make that happen. And it turns out it's super hard. Engineering professors, like, they're not interested and they want to do what they want to do, and we're trying to get them in. And same thing with nursing. We try to have events so that they could just talk together, like lobster and steak dinner, come over, it's free, just to meet people, and like, well, very few people came. It was surprisingly difficult. So Pen4C is the Community Collaboratory for Co-Creation. I know on the panel, those are all like, it seems like those are buzzwords that people were talking about, co-creation, collaboratory, and community. What we realized was engineering and nursing with a third partner community is super important, but we couldn't start the projects around engineering or nursing. We had to start with the community. We had to ask the community, what are your problems? And then can we come up with solutions, and then bring in the professors and nurses to address their problems. So we can quickly go through some examples that we've had. This was a group in North 10, in North Philadelphia, where they were looking at one of the things that the community has to do is there's a ton of trash, and picking up trash can sometimes be dangerous because they have sharps and broken glass and that kind of thing. So the engineers and the nurses came together with a solution which was an automatic device that helped pick up sharps safely. Another thing is the heat islands is a big problem in all major cities. So working with another professor in architecture, we came up with a bus stop that was also a cooling station. So this uses radiant cooling that's solar powered. We also deployed this for a test at North 10. And as well as cooling people that are sitting at the bus stop, there's also information about different health outcomes that can be affected by heat.
Yep. So one of the things that we learned working together is that we have to have a mutual respect for each other's disciplines, and we also have to learn each other's language. Sometimes we still have to say, can you say that in plain English? But I can remember on another project we didn't discuss, I presented my research to the engineers on this project, and several of the students said, I don't get it. My research didn't have mathematical problems embedded in my slides, and they really didn't get the qualitative piece that I brought to the table. So it was kind of fun to actually share with them, to show, and then to bring them to our simulation lab and actually demonstrate what nurses do in the setting to try and aid in the development of a robot.
So yeah, what nurses do and what engineers do and how they think are very, very different. So getting them to talk together and learn their own language is really important. And Pam and I have been working together and actually talking on panels a lot. And one of the things I've been thinking about is, why does it work with us when I've seen it not work with others? And I think part of it is, the real desire. Pam's recognizing, we can do all this technology in the healthcare space, and I'm realizing, technology can actually help people. We can impact people and help teaching that way. So that's what part of it. But also, I think we have a really good personality. We work well together.
Yes, we do.
Which, I don't know, that may be part of it. But if you can get people to want to work together on things that are shared, I think how you make that happen is also a little bit tricky.
Yeah. And that's that. Thank you very, very much.
That's great. Thank you very much. Can I pet it?
Yes. I'll keep it turned off so it doesn't make noise.
Recommended to try that. Thank you very much. Now from robotics and care systems to the classroom, and how tech supports learners of all abilities. Matt Giovinello is the CEO and co-founder of Frenalytics, an award-winning platform that personalizes lessons and streamlines IEP progress monitoring in special education and ELL programs, inspired by his grandmother's recovery after a severe stroke. So please welcome to the stage, Matt Giovinello.
Thank you, Jer. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thank you for having me. My name is Matt Giovinello. I am the proud CEO and co-founder of a company called Frenalytics. I don't have any slides. I don't have any pet dogs to share with you today here on stage. I'm sorry, but I hope this discussion and this founding story over my past couple of years leaves you inspired nonetheless. My story goes back to when I was 3 years old. I talk twice as fast now because I didn't say a word until I was 3. My parents knew I was speech delayed. In the late 90s, they didn't want me labeled for having an IEP. When I went through public school, I received speech services, and so I have a little bit of a glimpse into what life looks like for a student who has a learning disability and otherwise needs services to help them access our general education curriculum. But interestingly, and semi-ironically, that wasn't necessarily what ultimately inspired me to start Frenalytics. It is what keeps me here. When I was 12, my grandma suffered a severe stroke while undergoing open heart surgery on Long Island in New York, where I'm from. I live now in Manhattan, but everything I do, say, and believe by goes back to that founding moment. She was paralyzed on the right side of her body, had irreversible brain damage on her left side. She was left with an aphasia, which meant it was very difficult for her to communicate, but due to her stroke, she also had difficulties with comprehension and long and short-term memory. In short, in 2008, she had a long uphill battle to go through, and yet the technology was not there to support her. In the late 2000s, there were great advancements in physical rehabilitation, but cognitive rehabilitation, not so much. I was a 7th grader at the time in middle school, and I knew a lot about flashcards. I hated them, as I'm sure a lot of us did in our limited experience with flashcards. But for a woman in her late 70s, she surely not only didn't like them, but also couldn't connect with them. And that's when I realized there had to be a better way of going about cognitive rehabilitation. Fast forward slightly, I don't know how to code by this point, but I do know how to work PowerPoint. And so I created a PowerPoint program that introduced her and reintroduced her to these critical concepts and life skills that in special education and for our English language learners are things that students often struggle with or are learning for the first time. On that elderly track, things like her name, her family member's name, and those relationships, her home address, her dog, areas of her house, and favorite things from upbringing were all pieces that we had to teach her and reteach her, let alone how to have a conversation, let alone academics, let alone behaviors and other life skills. We had a long road ahead of us. But this interactive, engaging, and personalized way of reteaching her these skills is the genesis for what Frenalytics stands for present day, and is something that, even in a tiny bit of a way, really helped her significantly on her journey, and was something we soon realized could help millions of patients and students, both here in the States and also around the world, achieve their own goals as well. So, this is a long story. I will try and keep it short. No promises, fingers crossed. This PowerPoint program evolved into several versions before a family friend I invited over for dinner helped me realize that, hey, this technology can help more than just one person. It can help all of these afflicted populations as well. While we started in an elderly demographic inspired by my grandmother of others who suffer from stroke and dementia and traumatic brain injury, Parkinson's and the like, just like our nurse and engineer on stage before me were speaking about, we then realized at the turn of the COVID pandemic that this same technology could really benefit students in education, especially our struggling and underserved learners, i.e. special education, those diagnosed with autism or diagnosed with Down syndrome, diagnosed with dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. Students who are graduating outside of a life skills program, entering the adult population. We had speakers this morning say how that is among the most underserved markets. We realize that our technology can help them too. The COVID pandemic is kind of what put us up against a wall and made us realize that we can serve these populations as well. And so what started as a passion project for my grandmother, similar to Marius at Pleatley's story of helping his own family and his daughter, became this growing market for us within the world of education. Today, Frenalytics now has a little EDU at the end of it to signify our expansion and pivot of sorts into education. And we partner with schools and districts all over the country in their pursuit of not only helping students meet their goals a little bit better along the way, but also helping teachers save a lot of time on all of the regulatory and legal non-administrative paperwork, or non-educational administrative paperwork that they need to do to service their students with IEPs. So on the one hand, we're meeting our mission of helping students and also patients on the elderly side lead more independent lives, but we realized that we could do that through education and helping save teachers a ton of time along the way. I'd like to share a little bit of a story of some research that we did recently. Hopefully this may inspire you a little bit and connect the dots of some themes that we heard about earlier today as well. About 2 years ago, we were invited to participate in a nationwide go-to-market and research competition through a nonprofit called Digital Promise. In partnership with the National Science Foundation under the previous presidential administration, there was money carved out to inspire the next generation of emerging ed tech companies, and we were one of these companies that got invited to partake in it. We were a national winner, which was really cool. That's not what I'm here to brag about, but it gave us the funding and the resources and the know-how and the wherewithal to participate in research and actually carry out an effective co-design process. We heard about co-creating earlier. There are more sessions this afternoon dispelling the myth of what co-creation and co-design isn't, and hopefully giving some definitions as to what it is. For my personal example, I'll tell you a little bit about the research chapter that we've since written from it. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, don't get me wrong. I started with a personal story, I created a solution based off of it, but didn't understand the magnitude or the market or funding streams or the way that we could impact other families as well. It wasn't until we entered this space of education, inspired by COVID, that it gave us a second chance to think about this all again. And so we tried, or at least attempted to, do things the right way. And in partnership with this Digital Promise competition, it allowed us to do that quite successfully. In reality and practice, what that looked like for us was publishing a chapter through this partnership with Digital Promise. The name of that chapter is, quote, an EdTech developer and the ecosystem, the essential role of practicing teachers. That emphasis on practicing teachers towards the end is really important for co-design for us. So if you leave from this talk with anything, it's regardless of what you're building or regardless of what you're supporting project-wise or regardless of what you're dreaming of, if you can find the folks that you're building a solution for and walk hand in hand with them to help figure out what specifically and pervasively their problems are, you're going to increase your chances of success that much more so than trying to assume or otherwise fill in gaps that you might be finding merely on your own when you're a little bit building in a silo. And of course, I built in that silo, so I'm here to tell the tale. It is a natural piece for a lot of us founders to do, but we learned through this research study that there is, in fact, a better way. It takes more money, it takes more time, it takes more conversations, but it is a more enduring path nonetheless. Before I go into the specifics of this research study and try not to bore you too much, quick show of hands of who's in my group here, who is a part of a startup, who founded a company, who's supporting a startup. Okay, couple hands. Who, sweet, cool. Who do we have that are educators or practitioners? Okay, awesome, great. Do we have any investors, consultants, other interested people in the ecosystem? All right, a couple, awesome. So I hope that some of these takeaways are relevant for each of our groups here. The first was, as we were accepted into this competition, I'll give you a little bit of landscape. There were over 300 companies that applied to this research competition about 3 years ago. 100 got in, we were part of that 100. We were then told in our first meeting through Digital Promise and the NSF that you have to interview 80 people within 6.5 weeks. You need to have 80 customer discovery interviews. I'm like, I couldn't find 80 teachers in any time of year with any time period, no matter how hard I tried. You're asking us to do this in April and May in peak IEP season. I don't think this is going to happen. And they're like, we accepted you for a reason, good luck. And so after 6.5 weeks, we had 89 customer discovery interviews, not only with teachers who are working directly with our students who are trying to serve, but also the students themselves, which is a little bit of a novel approach. How do we connect directly with students with disabilities to make sure that their voices are considered, their needs are being met, and they're included in this process, because oftentimes they're not. How do we include parents, who's an adjacent population, to the teachers and the students that are being served in this way? How do we include administrators? How do we include outside parties that oftentimes their voices, again, are those gaps that are being filled in rather than being asked directly? So as a part of that 89, we included all of those folks and then some. By the end of our time in this competition, we had interviewed over 250 people. As you might suspect, 250 varying, oftentimes conflicting voices all around the United States, across the ecosystem, can be really complicated to try and dissect. And we have an amazing head of research and design on my team, Caitlin, who led all of these efforts. Distilling all of these voices into common themes is not an easy task, trust me. But by the end of it, it made our thought process and it made our validating metrics that much clearer. And it allowed me to lead with a lot more conviction prior than we did rather than what we did prior, excuse me. And so that's how we became really clear on this problem we were trying to solve. That's how I realized this technology that conveniently enough we already built was actually the right solution for that problem, and how we went into this ed tech world. Another quick show of hands. We have a couple of different industries here. Who is supporting a company or building a company within education? Okay, a few folks, cool. Who's supporting building across healthcare? Okay, awesome. Other industries, shout it out. Biotech maybe, I don't know, something adjacent, okay. Very cool. So we find ourselves at this unique intersection of healthcare and ed tech, right? If you were to ask me a couple of years ago, I'd probably still say I was a health tech founder. Nowadays, I'm an ed tech founder. I don't know if the label necessarily matters per se. I think this approach of building with empathy and realizing that at my company and many others as well, there's an ability to have a double bottom line. Or as I like to say, we can do well by doing good. I stole that line from a sign on my college campus, but I like to shout it. I'll give credit where credit is due. But I think regardless of the industry that we're building in, regardless of the solution that we've created or the problem that we're trying to solve, there is that empathy layer. I'm really glad that there are a lot of voices here today that are able to give spotlight to exactly that. I only have a couple minutes left. I want to make sure we remain on time. I know I have a little lapel here, but there's got to be a microphone somewhere. I want to make sure as you're hearing some of these details, and I'll get into a little bit more later on of what our technology looks like, that I have an opportunity to answer any questions as well. I'm sticking around for the rest of the day, so if you want to come find me, please go ahead and do so. I'd love to help navigate you on your journey, whatever that might look like, and hear a little bit more about what you're working on and try and give some advice along the way. So think about that now. I'll make sure I leave like 5 minutes or so towards the end to answer any questions. Just a little bit of a shout out there. To take a step back as to how Marius and I got connected, just a little bit of an unwieldy, atypical pattern that, by the way, is more common than you would suspect if you haven't been down it yet. Marius and I, among our two companies, have common investors. And so we got together and we realized that, hey, there's actually money being put towards doing well by doing good. Not all VCs are bad, as we heard on stage before. There are some VCs that are a little bit more attuned to being able to invest in impact and empathy than others. And Marius and I were really fortunate enough to find common investors there. That was around the same time we realized, hey, there's money to be made. We need to find a way that our Friendalytics software for progress monitoring and for data collection can be instilled in schools and actually generate revenue so that we have a team and a company to grow. That's when we realized these problem statements were incredibly critical, and the fact that we had to find some sort of funding stream within our crazy school district world. For those who aren't all too familiar, selling into public school districts is not for the faint of heart whatsoever, and it is certainly not getting easier with administrative changes, both at the state, local, and also federal level. When we realized that special education gets special funding, we realized that might be a way in. And so as we think about the 7 or so million students diagnosed with an IEP in the US, when we think about the additional 7 to 8 million students undocumented but needing special services, and then we think about the millions upon millions of students who are behind in their reading, in their math, in their literacy, and their behavioral levels, in part due to learning loss from the COVID pandemic, we realized there's a really large population to serve here, right? But you have to start somewhere. So a little bit of a lesson that I came about that I think is important for all of us to remember as well. We don't need to attack every demographic, every industry all at once. If you start with a smaller wedge, or you start with a smaller beachhead market, for example, as we did with special education, it allowed us to tap into that really specific funding stream, say, hey, we know your problems, we understand them as well as you do, but we want to work alongside you. We have this solution that's really unique, it's patented, and there's nothing like it on the market. We want to make sure that it is being built alongside the needs of your teachers, so it is as effective as we hope it is. And then partner, that keyword partner, with districts to sell into them. We found that to be the magic mix in my founding story, and I imagine many other ed tech companies who have come before me and will come after me. Those are kind of the 3 key pieces there, and something that we validated through all of those customer discovery conversations in that research study. It's really easy to fall into that trap at the beginning of your founder's journey and saying, oh my God, I have this amazing idea, I want to build this amazing solution, and then have a hard time establishing that product market fit or that founder market fit. It is a lot more work, but a lot more enduring to go through that co-design customer discovery process, as we did, and find and validate your success metrics and be able to implement that way. And so while I'm proud to be able to share a little bit of that founding journey here, it remains an uphill battle, I will not lie. But for everybody here who is starting a company or supporting one, it is so worth it, it is so rewarding, it is so validating, and I hope you keep with it. I want to leave a couple of minutes for some Q&A as we wrap up here. Throw your hand up if you don't mind, or shout. I'm happy to answer any questions as we wrap up here. Yeah? We were a national winner, which is awesome. The specifics of how that worked is we went from 100 companies accepted down to 52. It was kind of like American Idol or The Voice, where like all of a sudden you're just like, you're 100, you feel like you're amazing, top of the world that you got accepted, and then overnight, half of you disappear. And then that was the kind of the quarterfinals round, so to speak. And then after that mode, we went to semifinals, where it went from 52 teams to 18 teams. At each stage, when you went from 100 to 52, we received funding from it. From 52 to 18, we received more funding from it. And then from that 18, that was kind of like the semifinals. They established 9 winners and then 9 finalists. We were in that top 9 winner category. We received about $200,000 in non-dilutive funding through this whole experience, which was awesome. Who doesn't love free money? But the positive recognition and notoriety from it was even more validating, and our partnership with Digital Promise on that chapter that came after it was amazing. So, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Any questions? Yeah? Yeah, sure. Okay, so if I get your question right, confirm for me, please. Question is around understanding context and helping companies ask better questions that give you the pointed answers that you're looking for without leading them on. Is that more or less what you're asking? I'm not sure if I'm the expert in answering that question. I wish I was. I am so guilty of asking leading questions, and when we started this journey, I realized way too quickly that I was almost providing an answer I was looking for, which is a little bit of confirmation bias, right? And it wasn't until Caitlin, our head of R&D, our research and design, came in, she's like, stop asking leading questions. I was like, but this is really uncomfortable. Ultimately, what it looked like for us was asking an open-ended enough question to hear a response, but understand that the response that our users, in many cases teachers, were giving may not actually match the reality. And then you need to do a little bit of like a cross-examination to see whether they are just trying to talk themselves into believing that's the reality or whether that actually is the reality. So, for example, we would often ask teachers how they wrote goals for students with disabilities in their individualized education plans, or IEPs. It's not necessarily important to know what this document looks like, other than it's a very long, complicated legal document that there's no straightforward processes at all. So when we would ask a question about how these goals got developed, and they would recite either their district or their state or federal policies, we realized, okay, it's good that they know it, but something makes us think the reality is the way that gets carried out is probably different, because the state of special education wouldn't be, in my opinion, so broken or misunderstood if everything was going swimmingly, right? So when we got that policy, then we would ask, okay, give us an example of what an IEP goal looked like, and now compare it to what your district would expect. And very soon, we realized that, as another example, for a district that's required to reference a state standard in the IEP goal for a student, when 75% of the time that was not happening, then we found an opportunity to be like, okay, why? Let's kind of go down that rabbit hole and dig in a little bit more. And then that's how we learned the answer to that context problem that we were facing in our own kind of lane, and helped us get to more deeply rooted problems. Not sure if that answers your question, but hopefully there's an example there that
and
helps.
I have a follow-up, but
yes.
I'll yield time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come find me after, we'll go through that. We're done? All right, that flew. Thank you all for sticking here, listening. Thank you for your questions and for your engagement. I look forward to seeing you over the course of the rest of the conference. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Matt. Yep, thank you. We love what you do, and we love where you're coming from, so definitely. And there were some more questions, but I'm sure you'll stick around, so they'll be able to have some more conversations about that later on. Okay, continuing with human-centered innovation. Our next guest transformed support for neurodiverse individuals and their families. Rinat Hitelman and the co-founder is the co-founder of Wide Therapy, a patented digital intervention helping neurodiverse children and adults build independence through evidence-based, video-based rehearsal. Joining her, please, is Dr. Stephen Moran, a physician executive designing multi-stakeholder health and human services systems for populations with complex developmental and behavioral needs, and an advocate for neurodiversity. Please, stage is yours.
Thanks.
Hello? Oh.
There we go. Go ahead first.
Okay, so hi everyone, welcome. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Rinat Hitelman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Wide Therapy. And Wide is digital therapeutics for neurodiverse individuals where they see themselves overcome challenges they're facing in real life. And by seeing themselves, they're able to acquire essential life skills for their independence.
And I'm Stephen Marin. I'm a pediatrician by training. I'm on the autism subcommittee for the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I've been an advisor to Wide. I think it's an exciting platform, but we're not here to talk about Wide so much. We're here to talk about technology-enabled care, because this is not about our platform specifically. It's about a way of approaching the needs of neurodiverse individuals for therapeutic interventions. I also want to acknowledge, just before we get started, that there are some clear differences in the approach to naming autism. There's both person-first and identity-first approaches. I want to acknowledge both. We toggle between the two of them. Neither of us are autistic, so we try to balance both sides. Just want to acknowledge that as we're getting started today. So I don't want to go through the details of the diagnostic categories that are associated with autism. We put it up there as an anchor, but I think it's far more important to understand that autism is far more than its diagnostic symptoms and behaviors. That autism is really a whole person condition. And it's not necessarily disabling, but just like colorblindness can be disabling, there are times when there are autism-related disabilities. And for those individuals, autistic individuals, who do have challenges with skills acquisition or challenges with emotional regulation or challenges with sensory issues, there are times when some form of therapeutic intervention may be appropriate. There are also some significant co-occurring mental health and physical health conditions that are part of the autistic person, and often their health care requires certain accommodations, what we call autism-informed types of care. There are two aspects from a child development perspective that it's important to address for autistic children. One is that there may be aspects of their developmental progress that causes immediate impact to their developmental opportunity, and then as a result of those immediate impacts, there may be long-term disruptions in their developmental trajectory. So what we want to be able to do is help children as early as possible with those developmental impacts, whether they be communication-related or behavior-related, in ways that are interfering with development. We don't want to turn somebody into something that they're not, but we want all children, autistic or not, to have the opportunity for an optimal developmental process. The current model of care does create some barriers to access and learning. And they tend to be the fact that most of the interventions that are offered today are really powered by one-to-one interventions. And part of this allows us to be able to say, are there ways that we can deploy certain types of technology using, again, empathy-based design to be able to leverage technology in a way that does help achieve these developmental issues?
Okay, so I want to say maybe a sentence about myself. I'm a BCBA in my profession. I specialize in young children on the autism spectrum, and I've been part of this model of care for, well, a lot of my adult life. And when we're looking a bit at the numbers behind that model of care, so first of all, when we look at autism specifically, we're talking about 1 in 31 children, the latest CDC that came out. We're talking about an average wait in the US of 12 months just for a diagnosis. That means that for 12 months, these children are not accessing effective care to help their development, as Dr. Steve talked here. And once they even do, the statistics say that 50% of families drop therapy before meaningful process. Think of that number. That's an outrageous number. We're not going to go in the details on why this is happening, but this is the stats. And what does that mean when we look at the weekly care burden for families? The recommended therapy time, look at the numbers today, is 25 hours of one-on-one support. That's tremendous amount that families need to take on them. What really happens in real life is we're looking to 5 hours average therapy that is received for many reasons according to the 25 hours there. And the cost, this is a weekly cost, some of it out of pocket, some of that is reimbursed, but this is still the weekly cost, and when you accumulate it over a lifetime, you can get the numbers. We're talking about millions per individual according to the level of support they need. Now let's look at the outcomes before that model. What are the outcomes there? Only 15 to 20% of adults with autism live independently. I know that independence varies. What does that mean, independence? But still, we're talking about the ability to live a full and independent life as much as possible to that individual, and 15 to 20% is that number. Under 20% hold full-time employment. That's think about that number. That's under 20% as they grow up, for most of their adult life, are not being full-time employed in their society and being an effective part of their community. When we're talking about the parent side, we're talking about 20 to 40 hours of parents modeling care. That means that some of them leave their jobs. Some of them, this is all they do, just coordinate the care for their kids. And when we're talking about when they grow up and if they need 24/7 support, what does that mean for that parent? What does that mean for that family? And the other statistic, the other side of the statistic, is that under 70% of them, over 70% of them require support. So took all the statistics together, and the current model of care, this is what we're getting as these kids grow up. So we're here to say there could be other ways that we can enhance this model of care and shift it in a way that will enable these individuals to get different access and different outcomes. And like we said, it's also access, but that's not the only thing. Access is just the first part. We want different outcomes for these kids as they grow up. And we believe we can do that with technology.
So there are, I just want to emphasize what Rinat just said, which is the model of care is failing. Really important to acknowledge that we've created systems of care, but when you look at the life course outcomes, there may be short-term gains in terms of response to treatment. I use that word very carefully. It's not I'm not a fan of treating, but when we look at the life course outcomes, because autism remains at age 21 when services tend to be cut off, we're seeing that the model of care does not support people's life course outcomes. There's two ways of approaching technology in these kinds of situations. The one is technology-delivered care. It's pure-bred technology. And the other thing is technology-enabled care, when you still have the human factor involved, where we're talking about person-centered care with people involved in that care, but technology can then provide the support to extend therapeutic interactions outside of that one-to-one encounter. So when we're looking at technology-delivered models, it tends to be standalone, it tends to be easily scalable, but at the same time, there's a high rate of disengagement with purely technology-delivered care. With technology-enabled care, you've got the human factor involved, whether it's physicians, nurses, teachers, therapists, or others, including, by the way, caregivers can be involved in technology-enabled care. And there's a growing amount of evidence that caregiver-mediated care actually has very successful life course outcomes. It does have better clinical outcomes, but at the same time, it requires some additional resources. So the person part of this requires investment. But we also know that human-centered care does require investment, and we know that the investment actually pays off in terms of better long-term outcomes.
So I want us to look at a use case and really put it down to the ground and understand how this does affect children as they grow up, or individuals. I use the word, we're looking at all of our heroes of 5, and that's an example, but we're looking really across the lifespan. It could be very young children, it could be older individuals, but let's take an example here. 5-year-old Oliver here was recently diagnosed with autism, and he received support from both his therapist, that he has a therapist, he has a school team, which is a different team, and he also has his parents at home helping him and supporting him with his daily living skills. skills. Now, each of those groups, and I've been part of those groups, everybody really wants Oliver to succeed. Everybody wants him to get to the best outcomes they can, and everybody's working really hard for that to happen. But the current model of care is not allowing progress to be as fast as they could. So how can we change that trajectory for Oliver and for other individuals through technology and enabling it within the therapeutic settings?
Just one comment about that. One of the other challenges when you've got a therapist, a school team, and parents is often that the goals are set by individual teams and those goals are not coordinated. Technology-enabled care allows that technology to touch all of the people involved, so there's some consistency in terms of a goal achievement across all the members of the team.
I think that when you look at what you just said, it's not just setting the goal, but it's actually unifying a language. Because if you look at each one of those teams, so when you look at parents, they speak one language. They're also the parents at home. They're not the child's therapists. There's the therapist who speak a different language that is based on their discipline or where they come from or who are the ones who are treating. A lot of times it's a crossover between different disciplines. So the same child has an OT, a BCBA, an SLP, and they also talk different languages between themselves unless they are very coordinated. And everybody doesn't always talk with the child-centered language, which the child understands. Because Oliver is 5, and he has all these therapists, the school-based, and he has the parents, and everybody's talking to him in a different language, trying to teach him something that is difficult for him to understand as it is. But when you look at tech-enabled technology and how that can assist that effort for everybody. So the first thing is there's one coordinated plan. Everybody is around the same goals for that specific child. It's not different across the different settings that Oliver is in. We're looking at shared visual language and cues for that specific child, because when everybody uses a unified language, that child could just learn better. It's not as baffling for him in the real world when everybody uses the same language. And we'll also say a point about data. I think that what we want to see is that everybody is using the same data informed in order to get informed decisions for that specific child. So once everybody is unified across this, and this is what tech can enable, because who here, I know when I used to work with my team, I used to send a lot of emails. Right? You're sending emails to the parents, you're sending emails to the team, sometimes you're sending emails to the parents and the team, and you include the school staff, and so on. But nobody's really talking the same language or sharing the same platforms or sharing the same goals. So what a tech-enabled platform really enables is to put everybody together around the child, which is the center and the center of our shared effort. So when we look at the benefits and take a closer look at the benefits of technology-enabled care, first of all, we talked about access 24/7, usually, because then the children can access. They do need that 24/7 support. A lot of them do need it as they grow up as well, and they can access it before diagnosis, after diagnosis, during diagnosis, or any life stage that they're in. They can still access care through technology. Engagement is an important part. We do know that a lot of times as the kids grow up, the engagement level with the therapy team is not unified across the different settings, and also is not also accessible and available. So here, the engagement level with technology, a lot of times for our neurodiverse individuals, is enabling them to get better care in a language they understand. Outcomes. I think this is what we're here for. We want better outcomes for our students and our learners, each one for their own potential, but we do want better outcomes from them, and technology can enable that. I used to work in kindergartens, I remember, and by the time they were 6 or 7, somebody told me when I just was a young BCBA, and they told me, it said, he's going to leave the kindergarten, he's going to school, and you're never going to see him again. So make sure that when he's 7, he knows how to go to the bathroom, that he knows how to eat his own food, and he can tell the difference between the boys' bathroom and the girls' bathroom in a public space. Now, if somebody didn't tell me those wouldn't be the outcomes I would do, but that sort of language across the unified care really is what we need to drive in order for younger kids and more adult kids to be able we want those outcomes for them. So personalization, I think something that I struggled with always with the care is how do we personalize to each learner? I think that's a struggle for everybody. How do we get there to that learner, his specific needs? Technology can help bridge that gap quite easily. Coordination between the team, we talked about that for a minute. Efficiency, it's an efficient time-saving tool because we can use technology very easily without the need to start writing tens of dozens of email. I will say one word about equity. This is not the focus of the call, but because of the talk, I'm sorry, but because we can enable access to everybody, we can actually create an environment where it's more equal for everybody to get access to care. We're going to zoom in a bit about two things. One is engagement and outcomes. One of the things that we wanted to reach with technology is the level of engagement that the children are in. They love technology. We all do. Is everybody engaging quite happily with their phones and laptops and so on? So I think the same is for the kids, and we need to understand that there are also the levels of engagement are much higher when they engage with technology. Certainly, autistic individuals, sometimes the human-based connection is more difficult for them, so we need to understand that that also enhanced engagement can lead to enhanced outcomes as the kids grow up. When we look, first of all, one of the things that were important to me is a bit of shift of power between the therapist to patient-centered care. We want them involved in their own care. A lot of time what happens in human-centered models is that we are the one directing the therapy for the child. We are teaching, we are telling them what they need to do, how they need to do it, and so on. And what technology enables a lot of times for the students to be able to monitor themselves and be very involved in their own care, which is a very interesting shift of power, and it gives them a voice. Think about that, because when they are the one interacting with their own technology, it gives them the ability to control sometimes a very hectic real-life environment in a very safe space that is enabling them to bring out what they want in their life.
We've heard a lot, well, let me do this. We've heard a lot about technology lately with regard to AI chatbots in mental health and some of the challenges that people have had in terms of AI in particular, or the idea that this is somehow an analogous to increased screen time. I think the 2 points that were not just made about the importance of the hybrid model, increasing the level of acceptance, commitment, and engagement with the platform becomes really critically important because you're not just there for yourself. You're there because you're being surrounded by people who you actually know are in support of you having agency over your own growth. People don't become dependent, and this is again one of the other value propositions for technology-enabled care versus what's happening with AI and mental health right now, because AI and mental health is direct technology-based care without the human factor involved. As I just said, not all technology is created equal, and we do believe that, again, what we call the hybrid model or technology-enabled model really does bring the human factor into care by supporting the emotional relationship between the network around a particular person who needs care. And, you know, we've mentioned children today, but in fact, this model is equally valuable in adults who have similar challenges, whether it be because of intellectual developmental disabilities or a stroke, or the talk just now really resonated because there's a whole other marketplace for the intervention to come after, and that's really where we're
So I want to say maybe just a word about WIDE and what we do here. What WIDE is, we believe that digital practice can change children's lives. WIDE is a platform where children see the I use again the word children, but they're actually learners across the age span that see themselves overcome challenges they are facing in real life, and they are engaging with themselves, doing something that is really difficult for them in the real environment. And by watching themselves do it, they're able to actually overcome also challenging behaviors, but also acquire life skills that way that otherwise they won't have access to or be able to acquire in other settings. And this is part of the shift. And I want to say something about what Dr. Steve said about the technology and who can we trust in technology. I think one of the things that guided us when we did WIDE is not screen time as screen time, but how much minimal screen time does that child need in order to be as effective in real life as possible. I think that's really the difference when you come and look at technologies, and there's a lot of technologies out there, and I think you also talked about that. What I think that the essence of it, and I heard it from your talk, and I see it in Wide as well, what was it created for? And I think once you ask that question, why did these creators, why did these founders go out and get that technology? Once you understand that what they wanted it to do is support the individuals, you understand that they didn't want to keep them engaged. I have a 14-year-old who plays FIFA. Anybody here know FIFA, the game? Yeah? So it's not meant to trap them hours in a FIFA game. That's really the difference, because it's not meant for that sort of engagement. It's meant to support them in real life. And once you ask that question, how does this technology support in real life, you start seeing what tech enables your support, what enables your therapy.
Well, because it's goal-directed based upon the goal of the person, and they are using the tech to achieve the goal. Once the goal is achieved, the tech goes away, or it moves on to another goal that's been set for that person.
Exactly. So I think we're going to leave a bit of time for questions. We're going to end with the last slide. No, we have one more. There we go. Someone leaping. So we invite you all to jump in and take the leap towards smarter, better care with technology. And if anybody else has questions, we also have a booth there, so you're welcome to join us there and ask anything else you would like. But if someone wants to ask now, we'd love to hear questions.
Also, I don't know whether the slides will be available through Empathy Tech, but if anybody would like ours, just come to the booth and let us know. We'll be happy to make sure you get copies of the slides.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So thanks to Rinat Hiedelman and Dr. Steven Moran. I must say, what an inspiring first lab session. From research to practice and from prototypes to actual people. Yeah. Now we'll have lunch. Hope you are all ready for that. We'll reconvene here at 1:15. That should be exactly on time for the schedule. At 12, right now, there will be an opportunity for a meet and greet with Kaylin Partlow over at the entrance where you came in. It's on a first come, first serve basis, but with priority for holders of the Empathy Tech tickets. Yeah, and lunch will be served to the right after you entered exited the elevators, I believe. It's over there. And the exact how it's supposed to be, I don't know, but I'm sure they will figure out, or someone will help you over there. Yeah. Right. So that's it then. And remember to guard your food if you sit next to one of those with the Norwegian arms. Right. See you back here at 15 and over. First conversation this afternoon tackles a crucial question. How do we ensure lifelong access to assistive technology? To lead us, please welcome our moderator, Alana Raffel, an occupational therapist turned assistive technology specialist at TechOwl, where she manages the TechOwl community space for adaptive tools, maker projects, and accessible gaming. Alana, stage is yours.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Is my mic on? Do I have to do something? Oh, I'm great. Wow, I can't really tell. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here. My name is Alana Raffel. As you said, I'm an occupational therapist by background and assistive technology specialist at TechOwl. I do lots of things there. In terms of assistive technology, I manage our community space where we do lots of demos and workshops and adaptive gaming and 3D printing and all kinds of fun stuff. We're doing all kinds of stuff at TechL. If you haven't gotten to connect with us yet, please do. We have a table in the back as well. And I'm really glad to gather this group of folks here today and share more about the world of assistive technology across the lifespan. So I think we'll just get started by having each one introduce themselves briefly. We're all going to be very short and sweet today so we can get a lot of information to you, but of course we all are eager to connect with you outside of this short conversation as well. So maybe if you guys each want to just introduce yourself and then we'll kind of kick it off.
Hi, I'm Kristen McKeown. I'm the Director of Assistive Technology at HMS School for Children with Cerebral Palsy.
Hi, I'm Tyler McCready. I'm an assistive technology professional with KenCrest Enabling Technology.
I'm Katie Griffiths. I'm also an ATP, our AT educator in our Community Computing IATS program.
And I'm Candace Davis. I am a digital creator and disability advocate. Sorry.
Awesome. Well, so we'll talk a little bit about kind of what we think are some best practices or good ideas or ways to work with assistive technology across the lifespan. And so we'll start with Kristen, if you want to just share a little bit about the importance of assistive technology in schools and what schools and families can be doing to start getting students assistive technology that can work with them through the lifespan. So what are some things schools can do to help families prepare for that whole lifespan?
So in schools, what we're hoping to do is give the students the education and the tools they need to reach their full potential for when they graduate and become into adulthood. So we're working on communication, mobility, assistive daily living skills, independent leisure skills. So doing this, we're starting to look at basic communication, getting them to start being able to have functional communication to advocate for themselves. With mobility, we're working on power mobility, the use of their wheelchair, the mechanics of it. We also then start delving into smart home technology so that they can use that if they're living independently or even just to access independent leisure, turning on a light, turning on music, playing a game. We do gaming, but we're kind of touching on everything. The other thing we really pay attention to is timelines in regards to insurance. So when our students graduate at 21, 22 years old, we want to make sure we're getting them the equipment at that time with the insurance because they get 5 years. So we want to get it at the last year they're there so they have 5 years of good equipment. We also focus on the home and making sure that they have equipment in the home that is new and ready to be used so that when they get into adulthood services where they're not as funded, it's harder to get services, harder to get evaluations, they are already kind of set with some proper equipment and tools to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
We also do a transition book, so when they leave our school, everything is in there. What chair they have, what they have at home, how they communicate, how it works, how they like to have things presented to them, and some of their special interests and things that motivate them. So when they go to their next placement or workplace, they have this information they can provide to the next providers.
Yeah. Is there anything, Tyler or Katie, that you want to share about what schools or families could do to prepare for the future?
I mean, just to touch on what Kristen said, sometimes you can do all the planning that you want. You can introduce the families to all the technology out there. But I do think they do a really good job at just preparing and obtaining all the equipment that they can recommend in the moment and, plan for the next 5 years. And a lot of the calls we get is just new technology, or they got a new benefit available and they can get an evaluation. There's a return to work goal or the smart home goals, which we both do a lot in the community.
And I think I'll add too that there's really no such thing as too early. I think the earlier in your life that you're exposed to technology and not just for recreational or everyone's got a smartphone or a tablet, but really leveraging technology as a tool that can be used in daily life. When you approach that drop off after the school system, and now you're moving into the world of adult services, the smoother that transition can be made so much smoother if that exposure to technology and meaningful integration, you give everyone who's moving through this process an advantage, so to speak.
Yeah. And so then looking at post-graduation world of assistive technology, Katie, do you want to speak to a little bit like what that looks like in adulthood after graduation? What does that world of AT look like? And then maybe Candy, you can chime in about what that's been like for you.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of touching on what Kristen was talking about, like some of our calls are through like OVR or folks that transition. Technology is becoming more available, or you can leverage a piece of technology for smart home that they may have learned at school or may have acquired or may still be sitting in a box and they didn't know how to use it, they didn't have the education. So the way our program was built was community computing, and we have at Inglis, we have a computer lab, and this has just grown in the 13, 14 years that I was at Inglis and now out in the community. Is the needs just keep coming out. Technology keeps improving. Back in the day, we might have had a resident with a piece of technology or would use our computer lab for access, and it was mostly computers. Now you have smart home, smartphones, voice activation, the world of AI. So not only are people reaching out to us because they just need support in their technology, but they also may have transitioned from the hospital. So we're experiencing referrals for folks in the 18, 21, maybe helping the schools. We're seeing folks 21 and up that are returning to work or are returning to school and need support and recommendations for technology that will improve access for them in, at school, in college. We have a lot of folks that are sustaining an injury and now are able to move home, but mom and dad or themselves are just trying to figure out how they're going to access home, how they're going to even like rec and leisure opportunities. And sometimes we just get calls for resources. It's kind of how all of us outside of this panel kind of interact with each other, is just leaning on each other for calls, resources, referrals. Hey, do you know about this? Hey, can you help me fundraise this? Can you help me identify a provider and somebody that can come and evaluate? Hey, we're in Jersey. Do you guys travel that far? Oh, no, but we have a pal over there. So just kind of, meeting referrals in that way, word of mouth. And then we also do a lot of, like I was touching on, transition after an injury or moving home from a nursing home, where folks are just trying to interact with their technology or their home. So a lot of smart home interventions. And sometimes not too large. Tyler and I talk about it doesn't have to be so high tech. It could be, hey, do you know the accessibility features of your iPhone? Right. Did you know you can use voice activation as simply as this? Here's a couple verbal cue, visual cues, a notebook, like Kristen said, a transition book, a list of their equipment and things like that.
For sure. Yeah, I talk to people every day who are just learning about all the stuff that's already in their phones. And it's just, if you haven't gotten a chance to explore the accessibility features in your phones, this is your sign. So yeah, and so Candy is someone that didn't have the experience of learning about assistive technology growing up in school, so you were just learning about assistive tech as an adult. So what was that experience like for you, and how did that all work?
It's been a journey for sure. I came out of rehab after I got sick and became a quadruple amputee, and I'm trying to navigate the world, trying to figure out how am I going to use technology, if you think about it, we do use our phones a lot. Everyone's always on their phones, and that was something that was a big deal for me when I was coming out of rehab. And so we started doing some research. One of the biggest helps for me was McGee Rehab, really. I didn't get into rehab though until maybe a year after this all happened to me. So it was a big span of time that I didn't have those resources. But once I got in, my occupational therapist was able to help connect me with the right people, and such as English House and OVR, and thinking about, you know, tech for home. And that was a big deal. I'm very blessed to have a brother who was also very technology savvy. So that's something that really helped me a lot. But I definitely think that it would be great to have like someone who follows you throughout your journey. Like maybe, you know, even after you get out of school, you know, you're almost like you have a social worker who knows exactly everything you need. And I thought it was going to be like that for me, but it wasn't. So it would be great to have that, you know, so someone could be like, what would help you at home? What will help you with your goals that are constantly changing throughout your life? Because there's maybe a moment in life where I didn't need Alexa, and then now it's like, Alexa is my bestie. So, yeah, it's been really great. I love assistive technology. I love AI, and I think it's more so like I never needed to think about it prior, but it really helps me to be independent now.
Yeah, so I think to segue from that, it sounds like there were a lot of people in your life who took empathy and like were using empathy to really try to understand what you needed, what were your goals, things like that. So I'm going to pass it over to Tyler to talk a little bit about the role of empathy in your work. What does that look like when you're working with people to help get people access to assistive tech? And then I feel like you have something you want to share. So, but Tyler,
well, I'll keep it brief. I think this is it's kind of a softball question because the assistive technology process as a whole fundamentally does not work if it's not rooted in that place of empathy from the beginning. You know, the large majority of the clientele that I work with, they have intellectual or developmental disabilities. They commonly live in a CLA or a group home. And when I first get a referral for a potential client, we really have to do that work to dig into first of basically like, well, why is the referral and where is the referral coming from? Is it coming from an individual who has some kind of spark, some kind of small desire, no matter how big or large, to do something more for themselves with less support, with more independence? Or is it kind of on the flip side of someone else had this idea and someone else thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if it worked this way? And then we're kind of in this undesirable dynamic where technology is being forced on a person. And if you're not asking that first central question of, you know, what is the purpose of the technology? Moving through the process not only helps you successfully integrate technology with less abandonment, but it also increases your awareness of what kind of technology is out there. If all you know are Alexas and Rings and med dispensers and you don't have a willingness to learn more or go out and looking, then that's kind of going to be the same stuff that you put in people's hands. And if you start instead from what is it that you'd like to do and move to what are some of the barriers in place, and from there, what are your skills and strengths and preferences, and then go looking for the technology that has the features needed for that person to successfully reach a goal for independence, you're going to find stuff you didn't even know existed. And not only is it going to increase your awareness, but because we're starting from that place and it can be big or small, like you were saying. It could be, I want to go out and get a job and make money, or it could be, I want to turn my bedroom lights off when I go to bed. You have to make sure you're starting from something that is important to the person who's at the center of this process. Otherwise, you know, you can say Harold can do dishes by himself, so we're going to make reference material guides and we're going to give him adaptive equipment, and then you give him all that, and 3 months later, guess what? Harold's not doing dishes because Harold doesn't want to do dishes. No one ever bothered to ask him that. So it's really, and the process simply does not work. It breaks down if you're not starting and putting your perspective in the shoes of the person that you're serving, identifying what's important, figuring out how to get from point A to B in a way that satisfies them primarily.
Yeah. And Kristen, I'll give you the last word as we wrap up.
Well, I just wanted to speak to like parents and school personnel. Getting to know what your student or child's going to need as an adult and knowing these programs ahead of time, but also as a school to learn those systems too. So Tyler's come and has worked with me about learning smart homes and equipment that I can start teaching our students. We had an alumni, so it made me think when you said that, an alumni come who needed a speech eval, which we no longer do, but then I knew Alana at TechAl had people there that could do a speech eval. So it's also educating ourselves as staff to know what is available, so when an alumni does call or comes, that we know the services that are available to them. And as a parent, I think it's helpful to know what's out there and encouraging your school to start implementing it before they graduate.
Yeah. I think that, did that bring it full circle? Lifespan, all these things. Yeah, I think, you know, we've all, and kind of the thrust of this experience has been to break down the silos, connect, and that's something we've all been working on over the past couple of years to know each other, to understand where we overlap, where we can fill in the gaps. It takes time, like, you know, I've been in this field for 15 years and every day I'm still learning about a new tool, a new organization, a new person, a new resource. So it's like, it's just requires constant learning about this stuff. And if you know, I always tell, I'm an OT by background, I always tell other OTs to use us as a resource. Like when you're working as an OT and you have a full caseload, you probably don't have time to research every new assistive technology device, but I can do that. And so I always encourage people to use us as a resource. I'm sure all these folks would say the same thing. So yeah, we're looking forward to connecting with all of you more. Thank you so much for being here. We hope you're amped up about assistive technology as we are. So yeah, thanks again, and thanks to Empathy Tech for having us.
Thank you. Can I plug one more?
Oh, okay. I was like so proud of myself for being on.
We got 10 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. Come closer and then. Oh, they're good. Oh, great.
Amazing.
Hey, so quick question, maybe a very long-winded question, but Tyler, you spoke about refusal and abandonment of assistive technology and really getting to the core of what is that assistive technology for. I work with a lot of younger kids sometimes and older adults where having that conversation is especially tough, especially with, you know, kids. Parents are involved, older adults, they have a very strong sense of who they were, their identity. How do you start that process when you're encountering a lot of resistance, refusal, abandonment?
You start small, and you start fun, especially when you're working with you know, clients of a younger age. You know, like when I was younger, I didn't want to do anything that was even remotely responsible. I just wanted to goof off and do things that interested me. And a lot of the times, it's just identifying how they're using technology in their lives currently, to whatever degree. Maybe they're watching videos on YouTube on their iPads, and that's how they like to spend their time. Can we go from there and figure out how to also use this thing that they like for a little bit of productivity as well? You know, if toothbrushing is a goal, is there a Bluetooth toothbrush that we can introduce, and then they're using an app, and that's kind of a visual guide, and it's gamifying the process, and now they're using their iPad instead of just recreationally, they're using it in a small way to do something for self-care, do something for hygiene, something that's going to build skills in the future. A lot of the times when I am trying to see if someone might do well with like a voice assistant, we start with, you know, hey, Alexa, play some music. Alexa, what's the weather? We're not really digging into like the boring stuff yet. We're kind of building skills from a place of what we're already interested in as a status quo. So we're kind of, in a way, kind of hijacking a little bit, like, hey, here's this thing that you like, and you're using technology to do it. What if we use that technology that you're doing for fun and kind of add this other thing that starts to get someone realizing that technology can do more for them. And specifically, you asked about family resistance too and concerns. That's why I suggest starting small. I think a lot of anxiety about technology is people can see down the road and they can see where this is going, and they're thinking like, they have all these big anxieties about what's my child going to do when they get older? What are they going to do when I'm gone? And those are really scary questions, and nobody likes to tackle all of those at the same time. So really kind of trying to remind people that this is a process and it's not all at once. And if we just try this one little thing, see how it goes, implement, observe, revise. How did it go? Do we need to make a change? It's a living, breathing process, and I find that sometimes that calms people, even just feeling like they have an exit, so to speak. It's the anxiety of committing to something and the anxiety of thinking about the future for your child. So I try as much as I can to focus on the present, what's already working, and how can we leverage that. I hope that answered your question. Okay.
Any other questions in the room? If not, I have one before you all leave the stage. So one of your opening comments was a reflection on the role of families, right? And how important they are. And what I've heard a lot about today is more about the student that's on the journey, right? So what can technology do to prepare parents for that letting go conversation? For that, here's what comes next. Or I know for me, even having to learn how to use an iPad so that I could engage with my child was a life skill I had to pick up, right? So would love to hear from the cross-section here, your thoughts on that future of how to bring families along on this journey as well.
Well, for us, we start with, when we do introduce something to students, we will send either home a video of how it's used, how we did it, and do like a step-step guide, be it if it's how to put them in a chair, how to get in a stand, or how to use a shower chair. And then when it comes to communication devices, we will offer training. But then when you get into them using the technology, possibly if they're living in another environment and having the cameras so they can check in, having a call system for each other, and that would be more what they're going to say, but it's having buy-in. So if it is something that's difficult, it is really breaking down the task so that it's doable and not scary.
I also want to add that the training process is so important when we're talking about assistive technology. It's one thing to get the stuff, it's one thing to set it up, but then what's your follow-up service like? Are you providing in person, like, this is how it works, here's what you need to know, here's how to take care of it? Including the family in that process and providing them with, if there's an app that their child is using, is there another kind of like a caregiver side to that app or a responder app that they can be part of it, and the family can actually have a stake in how this technology works in their child's lives. That part's so important to really focus in on, like, don't leave behind the training aspect, because technology is scary, and it's no matter how much you know about it, it will always surprise you. So as much materials and resources and follow-up services as you can afford is really going to make a difference.
Yeah, to touch on that, we always, in our evaluation, do two things. One of the things is we want to know who your supports are. We can offer a lot of training the trainer, right? Like, sometimes it's clinicians that are working with them that we've gotten calls about training, and a lot of the time it's the family and setting up for success. Almost every product or device that we implement, we almost are thinking in the back of our head the training hours that are going to be allotted per device. So I might have 7 devices. I know it's going to be a couple weeks of implementation and hours to support it. And like I said, like, leaving every aspect of that device, any information you can give them. It's as simple as identifying like the best products with the best customer service, as well as writing down the last password, reminding them if you're going to change a password, write it down, change the date. Using autofill features versus notes, password managers, or as simple as a notebook, right? Like, having everything down. When we do like a smart home setup, we are writing, we have a page for every device, and troubleshooting we've encountered. We even, like, some of our contracts, if we do a contract at a smart apartment, maybe 20 units that received smart equipment, we also try to have buy-in from the apartment complex, the engineer, maintenance, engineers, anybody that's on site, even like housing. kind of, okay, these are some of the problems you might be able to alleviate in a phone call. Is your Amazon plugged in? Is your camera turned off? Is there an update that you might have missed? You know, with the rings and things like Ring, Amazon, a lot of those customer service will help walk a client through the steps. Have you experienced any?
Yeah, actually I was going to touch on that too, that everything they said basically is what I experienced. When I went to the rehab, they actually had the occupational therapist and physical therapist come out to my house to see the layout, and they made sure that my family was there, my brother was there, and we talked about like, okay, well, we have for you, you know, smart lights. This is how we use it, this is how you can set it up, and made sure to include my family. So it was like, the session was, I'm learning about it, but also my family member was learning about it and how to use it, how to set it up, and if we have any issues, who to go to.
Eric Williams, founder and executive director of Project Elijah, Empowering Autism and Unique Abilities Mobile Assist. We have, I lost my space, Isabel Katz, and she is the Family Resource Coordinator at Elwyn. And then, of course, Laura Sabal McNulty, Executive Director at Neurodiversity Employment Network of Philadelphia. So we don't have to do introductions because I gave such a fabulous introduction to each one of you. But we want to go into the first question, and that is, what does Build With Us means in your work? Is it on? You got yours? Oh, click it up. There we go.
Yeah, okay. So, sorry about that. Hi, as Jamil mentioned, my name is Laura McAnulty. I'm the Executive Director of Neurodiversity Employment Network. I'm also a neurodivergent individual, so I do have the tendency sometimes to have the shiny object mentality where my brain will take me on a little bit of a tangent, so bear with me if that happens. But with the question being, like, what does it mean to build for? Is that the first question, to build for us?
Well, build with us. What does this mean in your work?
In my work, to build with us?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I skipped. I think there was a build for us question before.
Oh, yeah.
I think the build with us question for NEN, we are a neurodiversity chamber of commerce. So from my organization very specifically, when you're thinking of building as a collective or building pipelines, you're looking at what each organization, what each individual's lived experience, what each employer's experience and what they bring to the table. Like, all of those things have value because they're unique, right? Every neurodivergent experience is unique, and so when you're developing policies, procedures within a company, whether it's for onboarding, whether it's retaining your top talent, whether it's looking at leadership opportunities, there are uniquenesses. There's innovation to each of those experiences, and so it's important that that comes through for each organization. So building with us really means like taking each of those experiences. So I'll turn it over because I can keep babbling.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. To me, it means building from the inside out, taking our real life perspectives, being really transparent, and bring that realistic perspective to what it is which your mission serves. So just exploring that, I think what that resonates by the basics is passion. Passion to serve a population that you live with. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandon from Onewell Healthcare. Jamal also did not mention we graduated from the same high school, Central High School in Philadelphia. So
259 in the
shout out
building.
to Central.
259.
Yes, 270. But building with us to me means keeping our clientele and their families included. Sometimes we make decisions from, the back end, and we're looking at the bottom line. We're looking at paperwork. We're looking at regulatory compliance, but we really need to keep them included and keep them a part of the conversation. It's critical, and it makes us better and stronger as well. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. For me, Build With Us as a founder of a startup is quite literal for me because as we are developing our project, which is building an immersive sensory play museum and community hub for caregivers and families, I have to often remind myself that I'm the mother of an autistic child. I am not autistic. And so I cannot build from my own lens. I have to constantly always seek out opportunities to put myself in the shoes of those that are, or allow their insight to lead us. And so one of the things that we've done through this project is seeking out those voices that represent from all aspects of the spectrum, from the individual, but then also from their caregivers as well, because they are the ones that can tell us best what needs to be in this space, and we don't want to build anything that ends up being more of a harm than it was a benefit.
Yeah, if I could just add, as a social worker, that sort of background, you're always coming with the perspective of client autonomy, self-determination, and I think that really is what this is in a nutshell, is, making sure that the people that we are working with are the ones that are served best by all the programs and all the things that we implement.
I'll just put in what that means to me. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with Governor Shapiro, and if anybody has taken that drive out there, it's not the best drive in the world, but what I did was I rode through the communities instead of taking the expressway. And the reason is because I need to understand how families are actually living. So I'm coming from Philadelphia, but I want to be in a position to represent families throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and quite frankly, all across the nation and the world. And sometimes I think we don't put ourselves in that atmosphere. We sometimes speak from the outside perspective, but when's the last time you actually sat with those individuals who are going through the struggles every day, whether they may be caregivers, parents, or even self-advocates? I have 3 friends that are autistic adults, and I love them to death. And it gives me a perspective to really talk for them and to really connect with other self-advocates that maybe aren't as talkative or aren't in a position to advocate for themselves. So I think building with us means you stay in the trenches, as they say. You don't forget where you came from, or you don't forget about the people in which you're trying to represent. And I believe myself and everybody up here, we try to do that every single day in our work.
I think what's interesting with that, Jamil, if you don't mind my adding on, is that you separate the idea of intention and having a good intention to do something, and respect that and understand that, with the idea that you do sometimes need to hear that direct feedback on this is or is not working, or you may have intended this to do X, Y, and Z, but maybe it's not delivering in the way that you wanted to. And we see that with employers having a good intention with their hiring or inclusive hiring practices, or with their onboarding, like, oh, we do like these things, and isn't that great? And it's, yeah. Yes, but maybe there's some other elements that if you're listening internally to the members of your organization, they can really tell you, like, actually, this was hard for us, so we can make a pivot, or we can make a shift. So I think it's important also to not let that your intention prevent you from hearing feedback that you really need to hear.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into our next question is where do anybody here, and you can all answer, where do you see systems building for instead of with the community? Healthcare. Healthcare. And I work for a healthcare, so I can say that. But healthcare.
Yeah, so in terms of building for, like I mentioned before, sometimes we're making these decisions behind a screen and we're not engaging in our communities like Jamel says. You know, at OneWell where I work, we are across the whole Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have 25 offices across the Commonwealth. So we have offices in Philly and Balkenwood, and we also have offices in very rural area like Warren, Pennsylvania, which is about 7 hours away from here. So it's important for us to really engage with the community and learn, you know, the different cultures and the different values that those communities have, rather than making those decisions from a corporate office. And those kinds of decisions are usually building for rather than with. So that's what we see in our experience.
And I think for me, I get to experience it on a daily because my son is 27 on a spectrum. I'm leading an organization and trying to get out there in the community. So I'm not just writing administratively for RFPs or trying to make those connections. I'm actually out there serving. So, and I tell organizations sometimes, it's okay just to look at our RFP. I know that's the process, but come out and see what we do. That's one way to actually measure the impact of our children. I used to think that success was defined in numbers of attendees, but you could just have one and the impact that you could have on that one person, but they would never know that unless they come out. So I try my best to get them to come from behind their desk, pushing the pins and all of that, because I have to do that part too. And at the end of the day, I'm still a father of one with autism, 27, and if I would gauge it, probably have a kindergarten education at best. So I got to be his advocate as well. So none of that stuff stops, as you know.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the spot, though.
You can go ahead.
I would probably also add to that probably every space. For me, as a mother of a younger child, so he's 4, trying to find things for him to do in the community was one of our biggest struggles, whether that was taking him to libraries or places like Fun City and Sky Zone. There's so many attempts at what spaces try to do to create moments, minutes, an area, a nook, but I don't think oftentimes they have the full perspective of what is needed or required for an autistic individual, and they're just like, oh, you just need a quiet area, and they throw all this stuff in there, and it's like, this is actually overstimulating me. And so almost everywhere, I think, would benefit from having access to experts and or those that are actually autistic to lead the decision making when they're trying to implement things to support our community.
Great answer. Go ahead.
An example I've seen too in schools is, you know, a lot of times professionals, again, having that interest to do good, are sometimes making assumptions about what a child needs. A lot of times I will see therapists making recommendations for like a communication device, and that might really fit what they see as the child's needs, but they haven't really engaged the family and understanding what is the family's routine, what are the practices at home, how can the sibling be, you know, learning this device and helping to model. So what happens is then that device just stays in the child's backpack, and the impact is lost. So I think, you know, these things that we're thinking about are so beneficial to really making supports long-term and supportive to the individuals.
I think I'll go out of the box a little bit on this one. I was at a conference recently, and we were talking about AI, you know, similar to we're here, Empathy Tech, we're seeing all of this amazing startups and different apps and different tools that are coming out, and it's wonderful. And one of the things that we talked about was how many of you have seen ads for how to write a good AI prompt? You could take a course, okay, and you've seen you can pay to like take courses on this and all this stuff, and how to learn how to communicate directly and effectively with our artificial intelligence. And it got me thinking about how we're spending time like building this skill to communicate with artificial intelligence. However, people aren't spending time figuring out how to communicate directly with the autistic community or the neurodivergent community. And it really kind of got me a little bit in this, like there's now this whole industry, this whole building up of these conversations with artificial intelligence. And I think sometimes we get so excited by the novelty and the innovation, and we're gaining these new skills, but there's also like this idea, it gives us, to me, an opportunity to reflect on what are the things that this buildup, this tech buildup is teaching us that we can reflect back into our own interactions and communications with individuals, with autistic individuals, with neurodivergent individuals. And so that's the idea of building, you're building for, yes, this tech build out, but also how is that reflected back into the community? And that's something that I was thinking about with this question.
Interesting point. I like that. I like that a lot. I want to go into this next question because I think all of us will have something to input. If you don't mind, I would like to go first because I want to give a tangible example for everybody to see the answer to this next question, and that's one practical way organizations can bring community voices in from the start. So to give you a little context, one, because the woman who actually started the conversation is to give me a chance. I see you out there. She's in the audience. Two, I'm going to keep my job, so I'm going to shout her out. But before I started working at CHOP, I was doing advocacy work on my own, and she found out about the work that I was doing through word of mouth. And I had an opportunity to present, just a regular guy, regular dad that's just trying to make a difference in the community for my son and individuals like him. And she stepped to me and said, I think we have a position for you if you're interested. And I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. This is what I would love to do. And, you know, to give you a little bit of context, there were some guidelines that I needed to fulfill, and I didn't meet those criterias. And they removed those criterias because they knew that I can do the job. That's at work. So a lot of people look at me and my position and what I do, and they're like, oh, we need 15 of you. And I think healthcare organizations need to get parents, caregivers, self-advocates who are passionate about making a difference in the community and give them a try to sit at the table, give them a seat at the table to intermingle with researchers and scientists, to talk to organizations, to do presentations, things such. I think that's really where the work we need to do. But I just wanted to tell you guys, I'm a living example of what that question, what that answer to that question is. I definitely want to hear from everybody else.
I can jump in there. I think one of the things about building with, like you're saying, empowering those caregivers to be leaders at the table. Our colleague who's not here today, Isley L. Baskerville, she, along with one of her other parent advisors within Elwyn, has created a training called Ditch the Diapers, which is one of our most successful trainings that we offer to families. It's an info session all about potty training and supporting neurodiverse children and learning those skills. And I just think that is another great example of, you know, their expertise, their sharing. I mean, Isley will describe those sessions as potty training support groups because they're very emotional, and it's a very intimate experience. And I think the approach that she and her colleague Jen Fisher bring to that space is something that us as professionals could really never do. And so just sort of also learning as professionals to kind of give the floor to the people who are the experts in this space, and that really builds the trust and supports the community where it's at.
So many of you are probably providers. We're very reliant on Sandata, HHA Exchange. We recently developed our own EVV system called Smart EVV. But the point of this is that we had meetings about it, we did an implementation and rollout, and a family member that has been with OneWell since the beginning, for 4 or 5 years. They have a son with severe autism, 2-to-1 care. She called me and said, I'm very disappointed. You didn't include us in the process. We weren't in the, we didn't give our feedback. You just implemented this new system that now we're expecting this affects directly our son's life. So I took that feedback very seriously. And it's critical to include those that are not only providing the care, but their family members and community members as well to make those core decisions. So.
To add to that, I would say also inviting the voices of those that feel far removed from the conversation into the conversation. So for us, one of the things that we found would help to move our mission forward was to find sectors that wanted to learn more, but they didn't necessarily know where to find that information. And so creating space for that through events and through opportunities for that conversation to be facilitated. And so for me, that helps us not just preach to the choir, right? Because we can talk to our community all day long till we're blue in the face about what we need and what we feel that we lack. But to your point that you shared earlier, it's really about us helping other people understand what those barriers look like and how can you be a support in this mission. And then beyond that, we've started to offer workshops for childcare educators for them to get a better understanding of, what they need to be looking for, signs that they need to be looking for, things that they could be doing in their childcare facilities to better support the children that they work with. And that's called our Basics of Autism or Beyond Autism workshop. And so again, just bringing in individuals that don't have a good understanding, helping them get a better understanding, and then also equipping those that want the supports and the trainings that they need.
I love what you were saying so much, and I have so many thoughts on this topic, and I think I'm going to try to condense it down. My brain's not always good at that, but my first thought in engaging with a community, right, is you have to know your purpose. Like, you have to know very, very clearly what it is that you're trying to do, or what the purpose of your organization is, and what your mission is, because we're all up here representing, different organizations that have like common values, but we have different missions, right? So we go about how we do things differently, but we collaborate. Which I think is awesome. I think that's honestly really wonderful about Philly. The Philly community is just so supportive of each other. And so if you're engaging with a community, know what it is that your purpose is. Like, what am I trying to do with my organization? What am I trying to do with an event or with a training? And then how am I soliciting information from people to get the feedback that I need to, develop content, or to develop a plan, or to bring people together? We're a networking group. What's important is that people are making the connections that they need, and so I need to get feedback. And the other piece that you talked about with our community, sometimes we are in an echo chamber. We talk to each other. And I think you really have to be purposeful in talking to people outside of just this community to get additional feedback, because one of the beautiful things about the neurodivergent community is that there's so much intersectionality, and there's so much difference reflected across socioeconomic status, across race, across gender, across sexual identity, all sorts of things. And so I think it's really important that if you know what your purpose is and you know what you're trying to accomplish, that then you're very, very deliberate in your outreach to make sure that you are representing the community that you're in. So for an employer network, we're representing small business, mid-size, large, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and like I mentioned, all of the different other groups that are represented within the neurodivergent community. And so I think that, to me, when you're trying to do outreach, it's not just this blast, right? It has to be really, really purposeful, and you have to do that self-reflection.
Yeah, I think for me, leading an organization for 21 years, it's just about being consistent and knowing what that is. And we had the same mission statement, safe, nurturing, and judgment-free environment throughout the 21 years. So just try to stay on those principles, yet serving. Sometimes we oftentimes get frustrated about we want everybody to come and we think we have this secret sauce, which may not be the case, but that's measured by what's internal. So you may not always get that back then. And then, you know, looking at it 21 years ago, autism wasn't talked about in our communities. And with my population, the low to moderate income demographic, we was in denial. And people would come shadow more than they would participate. You know, so but just about a consistency over that, some that shadow with us 21 years ago, they're just now coming. But they see the effectiveness prior to COVID. We actually grew 3 times our size during COVID, and then now kind of positioned us really well, but it took 2 decades to get there. So just remain to be consistent and love the population that you're serving.
So many gems being dropped here. I'm hating Mary looking at me. She's putting up fingers. But we're out of time, unfortunately. I want to respect our next presenter up here. You know, I would say one thing is that I also, too, am a strong advocate for telling parents and communities that they must meet us head on. Events like this, right? Communities must be able to come out to get this information, to mingle, to be educated. So the onus is not just on one particular side, but it takes all of us to come to the table and to talk about these things and really work on them together. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm very passionate about giving out that information, as I too was a parent that was very reluctant to sit at the table or be absent from the table. So I want to thank the panelists here today. Once again, Real Inclusion isn't for communities, but with communities. Let today be a reminder that collaboration, listening, and shared power lead to lasting change. Each one of you are my family, so I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you being up here. Thank you.
Can someone take our picture?
Picture time. Thank you, everybody. Now, our third session, Chris was over there. He was looking at me like, listen, don't pull out 18 million phones. I know you were, Christopher. Our last